Chapter 206. Heh, Lu Ping chuckled. Can't I rent a high-grade cave abode from your clan? The innkeeper's face lit up, but then he thought of something and hesitated. I dare not hide this from you. According to the rules, high-grade caves are usually rented to late blood condensation cultivators in the city. I'm afraid it will be inconvenient for you to rent a mid-grade cave abode. Also, the latest batch of cave abodes will expire in a month's time. If you can't wait, you can rent a mid-grade cave abode first. Although the environment there isn't as good as a high-grade cave abode, it's still not bad. In a month's time? Lu Ping was a little hesitant. This time, he was besieged by Miao Weidong's group and enlightened Master Jinli. Although he managed to escape with his life, he also suffered serious injuries. He needed to find a place to recuperate. Moreover, because of the continuous battles, Lu Ping had consumed a lot of spiritual energy and healing herbs. His body had accumulated a large amount of medicinal toxins that he didn't have time to refine. If he stayed here for too long, it would inevitably affect his future cultivation. Therefore, a cave abode with sufficient spiritual energy could undoubtedly shorten the time it would take for Lu Ping to recuperate. At this time, a cultivator wearing a red cloak rushed into the inn. His gaze swept across Lu Ping. Then he turned to the innkeeper and said, "Innkeeper, I have urgent matters to attend to. Please return the extra spirit stones quickly." All right. Innkeeper Li was obviously familiar with this business. You rented the cave abode for a year, 5 months. Our in use is half a year as the rental period. Anything less than half a year will be counted as half a year. Therefore, we can only return 1,200 spirit stones to you. Please accept this. We look forward to your next visit. The cultivator obviously had urgent matters to attend to. After taking the spirit stones and returning a token, he hurriedly left without looking back. From beginning to end, Lu Ping didn't say a word, acting like an irrelevant person. After the cultivator left, Lu Ping stared at the cultivator's back with an expressionless face. When the shopkeeper returned, he smiled and said, "That cultivator is clearly at the peak of the blood condensation realm. He must be renting a high-grade cave abode. Shopkeeper, why don't you rent this cave abode to me?" Manager Li was delighted when he heard this, but he still hesitated and said, "This doesn't conform to the rules of the clan. The clan has always rented the abodes uniformly." Lu Ping placed a storage bag on the table and pushed it towards the shopkeeper. "Shopkeeper Li, here are 3,000 spiritual stones. According to your family's rules, renting a high-grade cave dwelling for a year and an additional month will only cost me 2,600 to 700 spiritual stones. As for the fact that only late blood condensation cultivators can rent a high-grade cave dwelling, I believe it won't be a problem for Shopkeeper Li." Shopkeeper Li took the storage bag and scanned it with his divine sense. His face immediately lit up. As long as he reported to the clan that this high-grade cave abode had been rented by someone else for a year, who would know? He would be able to obtain 600 spiritual stones without anyone noticing. Lu Ping naturally knew what the shopkeeper was planning, but he didn't expose him. He only smiled as the shopkeeper passed the token to Lu Ping. Then, he turned to Xiao Sima, who was following behind Lu Ping, and said, "You should know the location of the cave abode. You can bring this guest there." Xiao Sima nodded and said embarrassedly, "Senior Lu, please follow me." Lu Ping smiled and didn't say anything. He didn't expect this Xiao Sima to be a shill for the Li family inn. From the tone of their conversation, it seemed like this wasn't the first time Xiao Sima had introduced business to the inn. Lu Ping's cave abode was located in a large manor on a high ground in the west of the city. This manor was the Li family's residence. According to Xiao Sima, the Li family's spirit veins had been cultivated to the extent of 2 small-scale spirit veins. The concentration of spiritual energy in the high-grade cave abode was equivalent to that of 2 small-scale spirit veins. This was the Li family's way of gathering spiritual stones and befriending the rogue cultivators in the city. The other 2 clans also did the same, but the Zhang clan and the Wang clan's foundations were much stronger than the Li family's. Lu Ping rewarded Xiao Sima with 20 spiritual stones and told him to come back 5 days later. Xiao Sima was only in the 3rd layer of the blood refining realm, so 20 spiritual stones was a huge sum to him. He immediately patted his chest and promised Lu Ping that he would come back in 5 days. Lu Ping looked at Xiao Sima's back as he skipped away. He recalled the time when he was still in the blood-refining realm and worked hard to earn spiritual stones to cultivate. He suddenly empathized with Xiao Sima's joy. Lu Ping didn't expect to meet someone he knew the first time he arrived at the EC. It was the cultivator in a red cloak who had just canceled the lease of the cave abode. Lu Ping had a deep impression of him. This person was the hall master of the overturned sea gang's raging ocean hall, Hong Shikue. When Lu Ping returned from the demonic sea, he saw with his own eyes that Hong Shikue was accompanied by Yuan Shikong, who later died at his hands. Hong Shikue returned to the mysterious palace through the teleportation formation on the deserted island outside of Autumn Cloud Island. Lu Ping didn't expect to bump into him here today. As he recalled the deaths of the silver-robed cultivators in the small manor, Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Hong Shikue was in such a hurry to cancel the lease of the cave abode because he discovered something was amiss in the small manor? However, Miaoyi had already destroyed the corpses of the cultivators there, so he probably wouldn't discover that someone had used the teleportation formation to travel from the North Sea to the East Sea. He would only think that someone had ambushed the small manor, discovered the secret crypt, killed all the cultivators in the manor, and destroyed the teleportation formation. As for the cultivators from the overturned Sea Gang and the Cho clan, they probably wouldn't discover anything either. After all, the beast tide following behind Lu Ping would destroy all evidence. In that case, only enlightened Master Jin Li would know the truth. However, it was likely that enlightened Master Jin Li was no longer in the North Sea. Lu Ping chuckled coldly. Although he didn't think that destroying the teleportation formation would be enough to kill enlightened Master Jin Li, if an accident were to occur during the teleportation, it would be more than enough for enlightened Master Jin Li to bear the consequences. However, he didn't know what the current situation in the North Sea was like, or if Hu Lily had already safely returned to Jinling. The North Sea monster tribe had launched the beast tide several years in advance. This was clearly premeditated. The various sects of the North Sea were unprepared and would most likely suffer a great loss. However, he remembered that he, Miao Weidong, and the others had attracted a portion of the beast tide south, inadvertently helping Jinling weaken the power of the beast tide. However, the Xinling sect, Yujin sect, and Linggu sect to the south would be in deep trouble due to the increased strength of the beast tide, especially since Lu Ping had directly disappeared from the vicinity of Autumn Cloud Island. The beast tide that was following closely behind could only vent its anger on Autumn Cloud Island. If things went badly, the overturned Sea Gang might suffer another heavy blow. Lu Ping was currently in the East Sea, so the situation in the North Sea had nothing to do with him for the time being. However, what surprised Lu Ping was that the murderers of the cultivators in the small manor were actually the first miss of the Li clan and her group. That day, before Lu Ping destroyed the corpses, he first asked Samling to collect the cultivator's aura that lingered in the air. He didn't expect that when he entered the city today, he would coincidentally bump into the first miss of the Li clan and her group, who had just returned from a hunt. Samling instantly discovered something. The aura on this group was exactly the same as that of the cultivators who had killed the cultivators in the small manor. Lu Ping had taken care of the aftermath for this first miss, but he didn't know if the cultivators had left a tracking spell on the first miss of the Li clan and her group before they died. However, Lu Ping saw that they didn't even think of destroying the corpses and evidence. It was obvious that they had no experience in this sort of thing. They probably didn't even realize that someone had left a mark on them. However, there should be a core forging cultivator in the Li clan, so these marks should be discovered and erased. This matter was getting more and more interesting. Lu Ping thought with great interest. The cultivators in the small manor, Hong Shikue, and the mysterious palace behind them were obviously a tyrannical force that spanned the East Sea and the North Sea, and a medium-sized cultivator family on this island actually had the guts to raid their stronghold. Lu Ping didn't expect that he would encounter such a strange thing as soon as he arrived in the North Sea. Lu Ping suppressed these thoughts from his mind. After he closed the cave residence, he found that there was indeed a faint spiritual aura inside. The most important thing about a spiritual vein was that it flowed slowly and imperceptibly. This was much better than using spirit stones to cultivate, and there was almost no waste. Lu Ping released all of his pets. Normally, When he wasn't in front of others, Lu Ping would never keep his pets in the spiritual beast pouch. Therefore, although Lu Ping's spiritual pets were mischievous, they were very intelligent and had a good relationship with Lu Ping. This closed-door cultivation lasted for 5 days. After he temporarily stabilized his injuries and refined the excess poison in his body, Lu Ping felt that his cultivation had improved a little. Lu Ping came out of his closed-door cultivation feeling refreshed. Xiao Sima was already waiting outside the cave residence's protective formation. He was so bored that he was kicking the pebbles on the ground to play with. When he saw Lu Ping come out, Xiao Sima's eyes lit up. He immediately jumped in front of Lu Ping and said, "Senior Lu, where are we going today? Bring me to all the places that sell spiritual herbs on the island." For some reason, Lu Ping felt a natural sense of closeness toward Xiao Sima. Perhaps it was because Xiao Sima's current experience was very similar to when he was young. Under Xiao Sima's guidance, Lu Ping swept through all the 500-year-old spiritual herbs that were being sold in the 3 family cities. Although he managed to harvest a few hundred stalks of different types of 500-year-old spiritual herbs, most of them were ordinary ones. There were even some rare spiritual herbs that were used as main ingredients that were not sold at all. However, this was still not bad. Ordinary spiritual herbs were easier to cultivate, but rare spiritual herbs usually had harsh conditions to grow. On an ordinary medium-sized island like this, once they appeared, they would probably be kept by the 3 families. Although this kind of large-scale shopping was expensive and could not be hidden from the attention of those who were observant, Lu Ping did not care about this. As a qualified alchemist, there were only 3 things he was concerned about every time he went to a new place. The first was to buy as many spiritual herbs as possible. After a cultivator entered the blood condensation realm, pills used for cultivation would become scarce. Other than the difficulty of concocting pills, the most important factor was the scarcity of spiritual herbs. Therefore, it was every alchemist's instinct to collect spiritual herbs regardless of the cost. Actually, the so-called regardless of the cost was only the opinion of outsiders. Once a cultivator passed the apprentice level and became a pill master, there was no such thing as a loss. The second thing was to collect as many pill recipes as possible to improve his alchemy skills. There were many kinds of spiritual herbs. If a pill master focused on refining a single type of pill until he died, not only would it be a waste of spiritual herbs, but it would also be difficult to improve his alchemy skills. The third thing was to collect all kinds of alchemy tools. This was the principle of the saying, "To do a good job, one must first sharpen his tools." As for whether exposing his identity as an alchemist would cause others to covet him, that would be a joke. How could an alchemist's inheritance be obtained by robbing others? Moreover, every alchemist had a large network of cultivators. Moreover, the alchemist circle was quite strange and xenophobic. The biggest taboo was for outsiders to steal an alchemist's inheritance. Alchemists might look down on each other, but they would never allow others to look down on any alchemist. Every alchemist would receive sufficient respect in any faction. Chapter 207. Xiao Sima was dumbfounded as he watched Lu Ping spin tens of thousands of spirit stones in the blink of an eye. He looked at Lu Ping with sparkling eyes. Lu Ping looked at Xiao Sima, who was walking behind him like a robot. He patted his head and said, "Are you stupid? Hurry up and bring me to the next shop that sells spirit herbs." Xiao Sima immediately snapped out of his daze after being patted by Lu Ping. He said, "There's nothing else. I've already visited all the shops that sell spirit herbs." "That's all?" Lu Ping did a quick calculation. The spirit herbs he collected this time, and the ones he originally had, were only enough to concoct about 30 cauldrons of pills. Most of them were early and mid-stage blood condensation pills, which were of little use to him. Even with the late-stage blood condensation pills he had on hand, it was only enough for him to cultivate for half a year. Pills were always in short supply. Lu Ping asked again, "Are there any other places that sell spirit herbs on this island?" Xiao Sima scratched his head and said, "Yes, the mortal market. That's where rogue cultivators and mortals set up stalls. However, the spirit herbs there are more scattered, so it's time-consuming and laborious." The mortal market of the 3 families city was located in the southern part of the city. It was a place where cultivators and mortals lived together. Some rogue cultivators made a living by adventuring. They were willing to spend their time setting up stalls in order to sell their harvests for a few spirit stones. Many mortals knew the likes and dislikes of cultivators because they lived together with cultivators. They would often bring their spirit herbs, spiritual materials, and other strange items to the market to sell, hoping that they would be lucky enough to reach the heavens in a single step. Previously, Lu Ping spent most of his time cultivating. Moreover, he had always been wealthy and didn't care about the cost when it came to alchemy. Hence, he didn't have to waste time searching for treasures in the marketplace. He would rather spend more spirit stones to buy from the shops in bulk. Hence, ever since Lu Ping entered the blood condensation realm, he rarely visited the mortal market. The mortal market had always been relatively lively. Many cultivators liked to wander around here when they were free. Most of them had the thought of finding treasures, hoping to get a big bargain. However, who would come here to set up a stall with bad eyesight? This kind of thing rarely happened. Some loose cultivators would even place some items that they were not sure of on the list. Once they encountered someone who could tell the difference, they would immediately raise the price and earn a lot. However, the cultivators were still very happy about it. Most of them were just holding on to a thread of hope. Lu Ping and Xiao Sima passed through the mortal market. Many of the people who recognized Xiao Sima saw Lu Ping behind him, and they all recommended the items on their stalls to Lu Ping. It seemed like Xiao Sima often brought other cultivators who had just arrived at the Three Clans Island to find treasures. Ever since Lu Ping received the pill-forging master enlightened Liao Ding's jade slip, his knowledge of spirit herbs had improved by leaps and bounds. Not only were there many 500-year spirit herbs that Lu Ping did not know of, but there were also a large number of 1,000-year spirit herbs. There were even records of 3,000-year spirit herbs. This greatly widened Lu Ping's horizons. 7 Nights Flying Grass, one of the supplementary spirit herbs used to concoct early blood condensation realm pills. 20 Spirit Stones. This is 3 Autumn Dew Grass, a supplementary spirit herb used to concoct mid-blood condensation realm pills. 30 Spirit Stones at most. Strong Wind Grass. Not bad, a main ingredient used to concoct late blood condensation realm pills. 100 Spirit Stones. What? 200? 120 at most. Forget it if you don't want to sell. Lu Ping passed through the mortal market along the way. As long as it was a 500-year spirit herb, Lu Ping would not let go of a single one. He would quote a suitable price for every single one of them. When he came across an opportunist, Lu Ping would directly tell them the name of the spirit herb, its growing environment, and its medicinal properties. If they continued to pester him, Lu Ping would leave immediately. At this time, the cultivators in the mortal market knew that they had met an expert. They no longer dared to try and deceive him. As Lu Ping swept through the market, he managed to obtain more than 200 500-year spirit herbs. Some of them were even the main ingredients used to concoct blood condensation realm pills. This made Lu Ping very satisfied. Many of the cultivators in the mortal market saw that Lu Ping was honest, fair, and not calculative. They all took out the spirit herbs they had accumulated in the past for Lu Ping to choose. Many cultivators even took out some spirit herbs they didn't recognize for Lu Ping to appraise. Lu Ping also told them the usage and age of the spirit herbs. In this way, Lu Ping managed to buy more than 100 500-year spirit herbs. In addition to the spirit herbs he had previously bought and the ones used to concoct late blood condensation realm pills, it was enough for Lu Ping to cultivate for a year without worrying about a lack of pills. At this time, laughter suddenly came from behind Lu Ping. Erlai, you're here with your treasure again? Erlai, stop daydreaming all day long. Even the pill masters from the 3 major families said that those things of yours are just ordinary weeds. If you have the time, hurry up and think of a way to condense your blood. That's right, Erlai. Although your brother risked his life to get these 3 grasses, he just wanted to exchange them for spirit stones to buy blood condensation pills for you, to reach the blood condensation realm. You're always hugging those grasses and not letting go, delaying your cultivation. If your brother knows about this, he will only be sad. Lu Ping turned around and saw a shabby man walking towards Lu Ping with a jade box in his arms. Clearly, he had heard that an expert in identifying spirit herbs had appeared in the mortal market, so he hurried over. Lu Ping looked at Xiao Sima beside him. Xiao Sima was obviously familiar with this generation. He said, Uncle Erlai's name is Li Erqiang. His brother is Li Daqiang, an early-stage blood condensation cultivator. For Uncle Chang to reach the blood condensation realm, Uncle De Chang risked his life to hunt demonic beasts in the depths of the endless sea realm in exchange for spirit stones, hoping to buy blood condensation pills. Unexpectedly, Uncle De Chang was heavily injured by the demonic beasts and died without leaving any words. When Uncle Chang was sorting out his belongings, he found 3 spirit herbs in jade boxes. Uncle Chang thought that Uncle De Chang died because of these 3 spirit herbs, so he decided to sell them for blood condensation pills. However, 2 years have passed, and all the cultivators in the mortal market say that these 3 spirit herbs are worthless. Even the pill masters from the Zhang, Wang, and Li families were curious about these 3 spirit herbs and specially came to take a look. They said that they were ordinary weeds, but they looked strange. Uncle Chang didn't give up and said that they didn't know what was good for them. Li Erqiang came in front of Lu Ping and carefully handed the jade box to Lu Ping. His eyes were filled with anticipation and fear. He said nervously, Senior, please take a look at these 3 spirit herbs. When everyone saw Li Erqiang hand over the jade box, they didn't say anything. Lu Ping took the jade box and looked around. The surrounding cultivators all stopped what they were doing and looked at Lu Ping. Many of them had anticipation in their eyes. It seemed that they also hoped that the spirit herbs that Li Daqiang risked his life to get were really treasures. They pitied Li Erqiang. There were also people who were looking at Li Erqiang mockingly, waiting to see him make a fool of himself. Most people shook their heads and didn't have much hope. Lu Ping opened the jade box. There were 3 pitch-black spirit herbs inside. Apart from their color, they looked ordinary. There wasn't a trace of spiritual energy fluctuation on the leaves and branches. They were no different from ordinary weeds. When everyone saw Lu Ping holding the jade box and not saying anything for a long time, they sighed. It seemed that even this expert senior did not know what this spirit herb was. It seemed that it really wasn't a spirit herb. When Li Erqiang saw Lu Ping's expression, the last trace of anticipation in his eyes disappeared. Xiao Sima looked at him with sympathy. Wait, Lu Ping mumbled to himself. So it's this kind of spirit herb? Lu Ping's face suddenly showed surprise. I found a treasure. Chapter 208. When Lu Ping's words fell into Li Erqiang's ears, it was like throwing a dried-up fish into the water. His entire being was revitalized. The surrounding crowd also went into an uproar. They quickly quieted down and listened to Lu Ping's explanation. Lu Ping pondered for a moment and said, This is a 1,000-year-old spirit herb required to concoct a special type of pill. Ordinary alchemists rarely use it, so not many people know about it. Right now, I need it to concoct a type of pill. If you have any requests, I will try my best to satisfy them. When the crowd heard that these 3 dark and swarthy weeds were actually 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs, cries of surprise rang out from all directions. They didn't expect that such a treasure would appear in the market where mortals and cultivators mingled. Hearing Lu Ping's words, the crowd quieted down. They looked at the dumbfounded Li Erqiang standing beside Lu Ping, waiting to see what request he would make. However, Li Erqiang was still immersed in great joy. He murmured, It really is a treasure. Big brother, you saw it. It really is a treasure. Finally, someone recognized it. Seeing Li Erqiang's excited expression, Lu Ping was afraid that Li Erqiang wouldn't be able to shake off this huge emotional gap in a short period of time. If this went on for too long, it might even affect his cultivation. Lu Ping coughed. This cough was like a sudden clap of thunder in Li Erqiang's ears. Li Erqiang looked at Lu Ping gratefully and said, If Senior didn't recognize these 3 spirit herbs today, this Junior might have given up on this treasure. Therefore, this Junior will listen to Senior's instructions. A 1,000-year-old spirit herb was too far away from a blood-refining realm cultivator, and it might even get him into trouble. Hence, he said, Fine, I won't take advantage of you. Although these 3,000-year-old spirit herbs are rare, ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to recognize them. I'm the only one who needs them for a secret technique. I can see that you're already at the peak of the blood-refining realm, so you must be preparing to enter the blood condensation realm. There's a blood condensing pellet in this jade bottle. I'm sure it'll be enough to help you break through. When Li Erqiang heard the words blood condensation pill, his mind went blank. He took the jade bottle from Lu Ping in a daze. Only after Xiao Sima's reminder did he come back to his senses and nodded in thanks. Lu Ping waved his hand and said, "Hurry up and find a place to cultivate in seclusion. Before you reach the blood condensation realm, it's best if you don't leave the 3 family cities." Li Erqiang's unfocused gaze finally shook as if he understood something. He pretended to look around casually and saw a few people's eyes flickering. He couldn't tell what they were planning. Clearly, the people around him didn't hear Lu Ping's warning because Lu Ping had cast some spell. Li Erqiang hurriedly bowed to Lu Ping, then hurried out of the market. Not long after, Lu Ping noticed that a few cultivators who had set up stalls had unhurriedly packed up their things and were walking in the direction that Li Erqiang had left as if nothing had happened. Lu Ping shook his head and continued to stroll around the market under Xiao Sima's guidance. With Li Erqiang as an example, quite a few people in the market took out some of their treasures for Lu Ping to appraise. However, Lu Ping didn't encounter any more surprises like Li Erqiang's. Even so, Lu Ping still managed to find a few stalks of 500-year-old spirit herbs, which could be considered a small harvest. However, even so, the few people who had their spirit herbs appraised were extremely grateful. These spirit herbs were too obscure, ordinary cultivators, and even pill refiners wouldn't be able to recognize them. Moreover, this place was located in a remote area, and there might only be 1 or 2 pill refiners in the 3 great clans. Normally, these pill refiners were very elusive, so how could anyone fawn over them? In the blink of an eye, a day had passed. Lu Ping brought Xiao Sima back to his cave abode with an excited expression. No wonder so many cultivators liked to stroll around the mortal market. The feeling of hunting for treasures was indeed wonderful. Moreover, as a pill refiner, he had a deep understanding of the various spirit herbs. The respectful gazes of the rogue cultivators around him greatly satisfied his vanity, making him feel a little high-spirited and high-spirited. When Lu Ping thought of this, he couldn't help but smile. It seemed that there wasn't much difference between cultivators and mortals. He gave Xiao Sima 10 spirit stones as wages, and Xiao Sima repeatedly begged Lu Ping to look for him if there was anything he needed help with. Seeing Xiao Sima leave happily after obtaining his consent, Lu Ping smiled and returned to his cave abode to cultivate in seclusion. The last 5 days of cultivation had only allowed Lu Ping to relieve the depletion of his transcendence energy and mental exhaustion caused by the continuous battles over the past few days. However, as Lu Ping's cultivation became more and more profound, this kind of situation rarely occurred during battles. However, once it did occur, he wouldn't be able to completely recover in a short period of time. Lu Ping swallowed a medicinal pill and began to cultivate qi on the spirit-gathering praying mat. The powerful restorative abilities of the North Sea Wave listening technique wrapped around the spiritual qi around Lu Ping's body and refined it bit by bit into his bloodline to replenish the damage it had suffered. At this moment, Lu Ping's bloodline was like a hungry Taotai, devouring all the spiritual qi and refining it into strands of pure transcendence energy. However, every time Lu Ping's cultivation technique circulated to the bloodline on the right side of his chest, a sharp sword qi would appear out of thin air and stab at Lu Ping's bloodline, obstructing the circulation of the cultivation technique. This caused Lu Ping's circulation of the North Sea Wave listening technique to slow down for a period of time. Lu Ping's complexion became somewhat gloomy. He hadn't expected that Taoist Master Jin Li's sword qi would be so troublesome to deal with. That day, Lu Ping had originally believed that Taoist Master Jin Li's sword qi would only cause him minor injuries after being weakened by him. However, in the past few days, every time Lu Ping circulated his cultivation technique to cultivate, a sharp sword qi would appear near the wound on his right chest. Not only did this prevent the wound from healing, it also affected Lu Ping's cultivation. At the same time, this sort of pain, as if one's flesh was being cut, was truly unbearable. He had been careless. Lu Ping fiercely smacked his lips. Worthy of being a magic treasure, worthy of being a core-forging Taoist master. Taoist Master Jin Li had left this sword qi in Lu Ping's body. Aside from affecting Lu Ping's cultivation, it also had another function, to leave a mark on Lu Ping's body. Even if Lu Ping ran out of Taoist Master Jin Li's perception range, Taoist Master Jin Li could still use this remnant sword chi to quickly find Lu Ping. He had to expel this sword chi from his body as soon as possible. For the next 3 months, Lu Ping once again returned to his previous state of arduous cultivation. Every day, apart from cultivating, he would refine pills. Every half a month or 20 days, he would take Xiao Sima on a stroll around the 3 family cities' shops and mortal markets, sweeping through all the 500-year-old spiritual plants. However, it was clear that apart from the 3 black spiritual plants from last time, Lu Ping wouldn't have the same harvest as his first purchase. However, Lu Ping didn't really care. On the other hand, the people in the mortal markets all viewed Lu Ping as an expert. Often, people would ask Lu Ping for advice on spiritual plants. Lu Ping didn't refuse any of them, answering each and every one of them. These rogue cultivators all benefited greatly, and were all willing to sell the spiritual plants they harvested from the sea to Lu Ping. It wasn't easy for rogue cultivators to cultivate. Most of the time, they only had incomplete inheritances. To these cultivators, any kind of cultivation knowledge was precious. At the very least, these explanations about spiritual plants could help them gain more benefits when they were exploring the wild, and in turn, they could exchange them for more cultivation resources. What Lu Ping didn't realize was that while he was explaining to others, Xiao Sima, who was following behind Lu Ping, was quietly listening to him. Every time Lu Ping returned to his cave, Xiao Sima would change his relaxed expression from before, and instead, he would hurriedly rush back to his residence. Lu Ping smiled and didn't mind. The transcendence energy in Lu Ping's body flowed along with his bloodline, like a surging river. The surging torrent split mountains and valleys as it advanced towards its target. However, along the way, there would always be a sword aura that was like a giant rock that was stuck in the middle of the river, and the torrent had no choice but to go around it. Then, after being continuously scoured by the torrent, the edges of the giant rock were finally smoothed out, and then it started to loosen. Today, the torrent finally launched its final attack on it. The giant rock swayed, and finally moved from its position bit by bit. In the end, it was carried by the surging torrent and rushed downstream. Lu Ping drew out a stream of clear water from the crystal glass bowl. Under Lu Ping's command, the clear water flowed around him like a river, and at the same time, it performed the circulation of the bloodline in Lu Ping's body. Suddenly, a wave splashed out from the river, and the wave instantly turned into a small sword in the air. Like a small fish that was wagging its tail, it left the river and began to swim around Lu Ping. Then, a second wave appeared, a third, a fourth, until the 81st small swordfish appeared vividly in front of Lu Ping. There was still a wave splashing out from the river, but this time, the wave only turned into a water sword, and it was not as agile as the swordfish. It only spat out a sharp light, and it guarded Lu Ping's surroundings. After a total of 324 waves splashed out, the small river suddenly seemed to become docile. It flowed smoothly, and no more waves splashed out. However, it now had an indomitable will. Lu Ping looked at the 300 or so sword lights in front of him. At the same time, 81 of them had reached the level of spiritual communication, and he smiled in satisfaction. This was a blessing in disguise. After half a year of bitter cultivation, not only had he refined the sword chi that Taoist Jin Li had left in Lu Ping's body to cause trouble, but Taoist Jin Li's cultivation technique was actually the same as Lu Ping's. There were many things he could use as a reference. When Lu Ping refined this sword chi, he actually gained some understanding of the realm of his swordsmanship, and his swordsmanship level rose by another level. However, this improvement in his cultivation wasn't that great. Although he didn't lack alchemical pills, Lu Ping used his divine sense to observe that the 8th condensed blood pearl had finally grown to a third of the size of the other 7 condensed blood pearls. He still felt somewhat helpless. After all, this condensed heart pearl was a cheap trick. Even though it was said to be harmless, it actually prolonged the cultivation time. When Lu Ping came out of seclusion, he saw a glittering golden sound transmission talisman floating above the protective formation outside the cave. This was actually no different from an ordinary sound transmission talisman, except that it was a bit more extravagant and formal, and was usually used as an invitation. Lu Ping stretched out his hand and took the invitation, sending his divine sense into it. After a while, Lu Ping narrowed his eyes in amusement and muttered to himself, "An invitation from the Li clan? This is rather interesting." Chapter 209. Lu Ping knew that the Li family had guessed his identity as an alchemist. In the 3 months since Lu Ping entered the 3 family cities, he didn't try to hide his tracks. That day at the Mortals Market, Lu Ping found a 1,000-year-old spiritual herb and exchanged it for a blood-condensing pill. This news caused quite a stir among the rogue cultivators. In addition, Lu Ping frequently visited the shops selling spiritual herbs and bought 500-year-old spiritual herbs without restraint. This further confirmed Lu Ping's identity as an alchemist. Lu Ping called Xiao Sima over and asked him about what happened on the 3 families' islands. From Xiao Sima, he found out that a group of cultivators wearing bright silver robes had arrived at the 3 family cities and were warmly received by the Wang family's patriarch. When Lu Ping heard this news, he squinted his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Then, Xiao Sima felt that the Lu Ping beside him had suddenly changed. As for what changed, Xiao Sima couldn't tell. He only felt that Lu Ping seemed to have become more powerful. Lu Ping used the spirit concealment technique to raise his cultivation from the 6th layer to the 7th layer. Then, under Xiao Sima's guidance, they walked towards the Li family's residence. The Li family's patriarch, Li Maolin, personally came out to welcome Lu Ping. After all, the other party was a core forging cultivator. Even if Lu Ping was an alchemist, it wasn't worth it for a core forging cultivator to personally welcome him. Lu Ping hurriedly saluted. "Junior Lu Jiao, how could I dare to trouble Senior Li to personally welcome me?" Li Maolin brought Lu Ping to the living room and pointed to the 2 people already waiting in the hall. "This is my daughter, Li Xiaozhu. I believe Lu Xiaoyu already knows the other one." Lu Ping had seen this Li family's young miss when he first arrived at the 3 family city, but he pretended to be meeting her for the first time. On the other hand, the Li family inn's head shopkeeper Li looked a little flustered, but when he saw Lu Ping, especially when he noticed that Lu Ping was at the 7th layer of the blood condensation realm, he heaved a sigh of relief, as if a burden had been lifted from his heart. Seeing this, Li Maolin smiled but didn't say anything. He ordered for the tea to be served, and after dismissing the servants, he said, "Lu Xiaoyu is an alchemist, right?" Lu Ping didn't expect the patriarch to be so straightforward, so he replied bluntly, "That's right." Seeing that Lu Ping didn't deny it, Li Maolin wasn't surprised. Instead, he said, "It's a bit rude to invite Lu Xiaoyu this time, but my daughter is about to break through to the core forging stage. I hope you can help my daughter refine a pill that can help her condense her core." Lu Ping picked up the bowl of tea on the table, took a sip, and said, "Senior Li must be joking." According to this junior's knowledge, all pills that can help condense a core are half-step core forging stage pills. This junior is just an ordinary alchemist, so there's nothing I can do. Senior, please find someone else. I believe that with the Li family's strength, it's not impossible to invite an alchemy grandmaster. Lu Ping's refusal wasn't out of Li Maolin's expectations. Instead, he said, "I won't hide it from Little Friend. Little Friend's situation in the 3 family cities is not only known to my Li family, but also to the other 2 families. Little Friend not only collected 500-year-old spirit grasses, but also bought a few 1,000-year-old spirit grasses from the shops in the 3 family cities at a high price. Especially when Little Friend bought the unknown 1,000-year-old spirit grasses from rogue cultivator Li Erqiang. You said it would be of great use to Little Friend. If Little Friend didn't have the confidence to refine a half-step core forging stage pill, how could you do this?" Lu Ping knew that his identity as an alchemist had long been discovered, but he didn't think that on the day he bought the 3 spirit grasses from Li Erqiang, his excited words would cause the Li family's patriarch to guess so much. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Li Maolin saw that Lu Ping didn't speak, so he said, "I ask Little Friend to lend a hand to my daughter. My Li family will reward you handsomely." Lu Ping knew that a core forging stage cultivator had already given him enough face. If he continued to decline, he would offend the Li family. The 3 family cities were the Li family's territory. If that happened, whether or not he would be able to leave this place would be a problem. Lu Ping smiled bitterly and said, "I'm very curious. With the Li family's strength, it is entirely possible to invite an alchemy grandmaster, or even an alchemist who has reached the core forging stage. After all, with divine sense, the success rate of refining a half-step core forging stage pill will increase by a lot. Li Maolin saw that Lu Ping didn't refuse, and his expression relaxed. Even Li Xiuzhu and the shopkeeper beside him had a happy expression on their faces. Hearing Lu Ping's words, Li Maolin smiled bitterly and said, "I ask little friend to forgive me. My daughter has her own difficulties. She can't wait that long, and I can't invite an alchemy grandmaster to help." Lu Ping nodded and didn't pursue the matter. Instead, he said, "Although this junior was lucky enough to refine a half-step core forging pill, due to the limitations of my skill, the success rate is extremely low. I'm afraid that senior will have to prepare more spiritual herbs." Li Maolin nodded and said, "Of course. The family has already prepared 3 sets of spiritual herbs. As long as little friend can refine 2 pills, it will be fine. Even if little friend fails, my Li family will not make things difficult for little friend." After sending off Lu Ping, the shopkeeper cautiously stepped forward and asked, "Big brother, isn't this a bit too hasty? After all, the other party is only a blood condensation stage cultivator. I'm afraid it will be extremely difficult for him to refine a half-step core forging pill." Li Maolin didn't answer the shopkeeper's question. Instead, he turned to the young lady beside him and asked, "Zhuer, what do you think?" Hearing this, Miss Li said, "There's not enough time. No matter what, we have to gamble." Li Maolin sighed and said, "Yes, the Zhang family has always been the most powerful family in Sanja City. The Wang family and the Li family have always worked together to keep them in check. I didn't expect the Wang family to have dealings with the Crystal Palace. This really caught my Li family off guard." Miss Li said in a low voice, "It's my daughter's fault for causing trouble for the family. If I wasn't on my family island..." Li Maolin raised his hand and stopped Miss Li from speaking. He said, "This matter isn't your fault. If it wasn't for this, our Li family wouldn't have known that the Wang family has already sided with the Crystal Palace. This can be considered a blessing in disguise. Moreover, the Wang family has sided with the Crystal Palace. The Zhang family should be more anxious than us." Li Maolin paused and turned to look at shopkeeper Li. He said, "If you spent more time on cultivation, you would have reached the late stage of the blood condensation realm by now. Do you think our Li family still needs a few hundred spirit stones?" Shopkeeper Li smiled bitterly. "Big brother, I know my own strength. Reaching the mid-stage of the blood condensation realm is already my limit. I never expected to advance to the core forging realm. The only thing I have left is to earn spirit stones." Li Maolin waved his hand. He knew that this brother of his was mischievous, so he didn't want to argue with him anymore. Instead, he ordered, "Try to collect as many herbs as possible to prevent this person from failing 3 times. 1 month from now, the Sanja Island's underground trade fair will be held. At that time, we must exchange all the herbs we have. Don't be stingy with spirit stones. We can always earn more spirit stones. As long as our Li family has another core forging realm cultivator, the situation on Sanja Island will be stable for a while." Miss Li saw that her father was tired and said worriedly, "Father, should we inform the ancestor?" "Nonsense," Li Maolin shouted. Then, he lowered his voice and said solemnly, "Don't mention this again. Remember, our Li family is our Li family. There has never been any ancestor. If this matter is spread, our Li family will be annihilated. If we delay it, we won't be able to atone for our sins even if we die 10,000 times." Shopkeeper Li and Miss Li didn't dare to say anything. Li Maolin thought for a moment and said, "You can invite Lu Jio to the auction." Chapter 210. Naturally, Lu Ping didn't know that he had been dragged into the conflict between the 3 clans. At this moment, he was concentrating on figuring out the pill recipe he got from the Li clan that could increase the success rate of pill condensation. The recipe for the 7-step marked pill was even more complicated than the heart-dissolving pill that Lu Ping had concocted. The heart-dissolving pill required a total of 49 types of spiritual herbs. Among them, there were 24 types of 1,000-year spiritual herbs. It was only 3 types of spiritual herbs away from the minimum requirement of 27 types of 1,000-year spiritual herbs for core Forging Realm pills. However, the 7-step marked pellet required 26 types of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs, which was almost the same as a core Forging Realm medicinal pellet. This was undoubtedly a severe challenge for Lu Ping's alchemy skills. The reason why Lu Ping agreed to concoct the 7-step marked pill was not only because of the Li clan's patriarch's request, but also because Lu Ping was interested in this pill that could increase the success rate of pill condensation. Now that he was at the 8th layer of the blood condensation realm, the core forging realm wasn't too far away for him. He needed to accumulate enough to break through to the core forging realm in the future. Moreover, as an alchemist, he was naturally interested in collecting all kinds of pill recipes. This was also the professional conduct of a qualified alchemist. Of course, the most important thing was that Lu Ping had a trump card up his sleeve: the mysterious leaf grass. This was a 1,000-year spiritual herb that Lu Ping had exchanged from Li Erqiang for a blood-dissolving pill. In order to strengthen his divine sense, Lu Ping had chosen 3 methods. The first was the soul-nurturing technique, which Lu Ping had been practicing all this time. The third was the soul-splitting technique. After Lu Ping had exchanged the earth core flame for the soul-nurturing wood, he had been using the soul-nurturing wood and enduring the pain of his divine sense splitting. However, Lu Ping had to give up on the second method. It wasn't because the second method was difficult to practice, nor was it because the soul-expanding pill was difficult to concoct. It was because the main ingredient of the soul-expanding pill was the mysterious leaf grass. This 1,000-year spiritual herb was extremely rare, comparable to some 3,000-year spiritual herbs. Ever since Lu Ping became an alchemist, he had been searching for this spiritual herb. He had even asked his master, Lu Xianling, and his second senior apprentice sister, Li Xianru. However, he had no results. He had originally given up, but unexpectedly, he had the fortune to find this spiritual herb in the 3 clans. With the mystic leaf cloak grass, Lu Ping would be able to concoct the spirit expansion pellet. It was also a half-step core forging realm medicinal pellet, but it only required 15,000-year-old spirit herbs. It was slightly more difficult to concoct than the golden resilience pellet, but far from being comparable to the heart-dissolving pellet. As for the other herbs, Lu Ping had already collected them. It was only because of the mysterious leaf grass that he had delayed until now. The concoction of the spirit expansion pellets went smoothly. When Lu Ping was concocting the golden invincible pellets, due to his improved purification technique, the success rate of concocting golden invincible pellets had increased to 4 per cauldron. Although concocting the spirit expansion pellets was harder than concocting the golden invincible pellets, Lu Ping's cultivation base was now at the 8th layer blood condensation realm. With this increase and decrease, the success rate of concocting the spirit expanding pill remained at 4 pills. 3 stalks of mysterious leaf grass produced a total of 12 spirit expanding pills. However, the number of 1,000-year spiritual herbs that Lu Ping had collected was decreasing. The spirit expanding pill was as black as ink. It looked as if it wanted to swallow the surrounding light. Lu Ping wrapped a spirit expanding pill with his divine sense. The spirit expanding pill was like a magnet, crazily swallowing the surrounding divine sense into the pill. As Lu Ping's divine sense continued to enter the pill, the spirit expanding pill gradually shrunk as if it had melted. However, through his divine sense, Lu Ping knew that the spirit expanding pill hadn't melted. Instead, as Lu Ping's divine sense entered the pill, it gradually transformed into a transparent ball of divine sense. When the spirit expansion pellet turned transparent due to the influx of divine sense, or rather, an invisible divine sense ball, the pellet suddenly exploded and completely fused with Lu Ping's divine sense. Lu Ping immediately felt his divine sense's strength increase by 100 feet. His divine sense was now stronger than before, and his divine sense could reach up to 10 feet. Lu Ping carefully felt the newly increased divine sense. The entire process took about 4 hours, and the results were not bad. However, Lu Ping knew that this was because of the initial effects of the spirit expanding pill. By the second pill, it was already good enough for his divine sense to increase by 70 to 80 meters. As the spirit expanding pill continued to be consumed, The effect would become weaker and weaker until it was negligible. Half a month later, when Lu Ping received an invitation from the Li clan to participate in the underground auction in the three family cities, Lu Ping had already consumed all 12 spirit-expanding pills. The strength of his divine sense had expanded by 30 meters, allowing Lu Ping to have a complete understanding of the area around him that was more than 200 meters around him. On this day, Lu Ping called Xiao Sima over. While listening to him talk about the interesting things that had happened in the three family cities, he continued the process of sweeping up the spiritual grasses in the three family cities. Recently, the most powerful Zhang clan still hadn't changed much. On the other hand, the Li clan's activities had decreased recently. Even if there were cultivators that went out, they would be very careful with their words and actions, as if they were afraid of causing trouble. The Wang clan was the most active during this period of time. They often held large banquets and invited some of the famous rogue cultivators and small gangs in the three family cities. It was said that the Wang clan's patriarch had visited the Li clan a few times. Along the way, Lu Ping listened to Xiao Sima talk about the various things that had happened in the three family cities recently. Not long after, the two of them arrived at the mortal market. However, they found that the market was very noisy. Lu Ping raised his head and looked at the market. He saw a cultivator wearing a silver robe, accompanied by a young man and a middle-aged man. They were arguing with a rogue cultivator who had set up a stall in the market. When Lu Ping saw the silver robe, he wanted to avoid it. However, there were already many cultivators in the market who saw Lu Ping's figure. They all shouted, "Senior Lu is here! Senior Lu is here!" Everyone looked at Lu Ping. The three people led by the silver robe also stopped arguing and looked in Lu Ping's direction. Seeing that he couldn't avoid them, Lu Ping brought Xiao Sima into the market. As soon as Lu Ping entered the market, Li Erqiang, who had already reached the blood condensation realm, appeared out of nowhere. He handed 2 jade boxes to Lu Ping and said, "Immortal Master Lu, do you think these 2 spirit herbs can be used?" Lu Ping opened the boxes and heard Xiao Sima muttering behind him. 7 stalks of 500-year-old jade containing grass and 5 stalks of blood night grass. Lu Ping turned to look at Xiao Sima. "You recognize these 2 spirit herbs?" Xiao Sima blushed. "I've been following Immortal Master for a while now. I've seen many spirit herbs, so I recognize them." Xiao Sima's eyes were filled with apprehension. Lu Ping didn't deny it. He turned to Li Erqiang and said, "You've just reached the blood condensation realm. This is the time to consolidate your cultivation and advance by leaps and bounds. Why aren't you cultivating in seclusion? Why are you adventuring in the endless sea realm?" Li Erqiang smiled but didn't answer. Lu Ping knew that Li Erqiang was taking care of Li Daqiang's 2 children. It was said that these 2 children were quite talented in cultivation. Lu Ping guessed that Li Erqiang was in desperate need of cultivation resources, so he said, "These 7 stalks of jade-containing grass are the main ingredients for the late blood condensation realm jade-containing pill. It's what I need right now." These 5 stalks of blood night grass aren't the main ingredients, but they're indispensable to many blood condensation realm pills. They're worth quite a bit. Take them first and consolidate your cultivation. With your blood condensation realm cultivation, you should have no problem providing for your 2 children's cultivation. Li Erqiang clenched the things that Lu Ping handed to him tightly. Although he was extremely excited, he didn't show it on his face. He only bowed to Lu Ping and hurried back to his courtyard. When he was sure that no one was around, he opened his tightly clenched hands and revealed a small storage pouch. Li Erqiang sent his divine sense into the pouch and found a bottle of China root pills and 2 mid-grade spirit stones inside. Wang Yishan was furious. It wasn't easy for him to invite a distinguished guest of his family to visit the 3 families' cities. He even invited his family's alchemist to accompany him. This distinguished guest was also an alchemist and could even refine half-step core forging realm pills. If he could win the favor of this half-step grandmaster and refine a few pills that could help him break through to the core forging realm, he would become the 4th core forging realm cultivator in his family. He would become the Wang clan's first successor and the #1 expert of the younger generation in the 3 family cities. This would be the first time he would be able to trample on the arrogantly Xiuzhu. Even the Zhang siblings, Zhang Shengqian and Zhang Shengkuan, would have to look down on him. Wang Yishan was originally secretly applauding his plan, But the distinguished guest suddenly became interested in the mortal market of the three family cities. Wang Yishan didn't understand why an esteemed alchemist would want to go to a place where rogue cultivators gathered. Although the three family cities weren't as prosperous as the markets on the large islands, the city's facilities were quite complete. Wang Yishan couldn't figure it out. Seeing that his alchemist didn't object, he could only attribute it to the eccentricity of alchemists. Then, when he arrived at the mortal market, Wang Yishan really realized how hateful these rogue cultivators were. Each of them pretended to be knowledgeable, commenting on the spirit herbs in their hands, as if they were sitting on the ground and raising the price. Could it be that they were more knowledgeable than the two alchemists beside him? Seeing the two alchemists' repeated attempts to purchase the spirit herbs from these rogue cultivators to no avail, Wang Yishan felt that his family's distinguished guest was giving him too much face. Although the distinguished guest looked unhappy, he was still patiently bargaining with these unruly people, obviously showing respect for his identity. Wang Yishan thought that his opportunity had come. Why should he be polite to these rogue cultivators? As long as he reprimanded these rogue cultivators with his identity as the Wang family's eldest young master, letting these unruly people know who was the master of the three family cities, would they not obediently sell their spirit herbs to his family's distinguished guest? In this way, not only would he show his dignity and the status of his family, he would also be able to leave a good impression on the distinguished guest in front of him. Thinking of this, Wang Yishan suddenly felt that he was wise and powerful. Things were often unexpected. Just as Wang Yishan put on the dignity of the master of the three family cities, the Wang family's eldest young master, and loudly reprimanded an old mortal who was unwilling to sell his spirit herbs, the rogue cultivators who had set up stalls in the mortal market actually accused the Wang family of taking advantage of their power to bully others, and that the price of the spirit herbs was far lower than the actual value of the spirit herbs. The Wang family's eldest young master's attempt to show his image as the master of the three family cities had failed, and instead he was accused by a group of unruly people, causing him to fly into a rage out of humiliation. Since when did rogue cultivators have such great courage? Since when did rogue cultivators have such a deep understanding of spirit herbs? The Wang family's eldest young master immediately argued with the rogue cultivators in the market. The Wang family's alchemists who had come together with him wanted to stop them, but it was already too late. The Wang family's eldest young master, whose face was flushed with anger, was determined to restore his image in front of everyone, but he did not know that his image was getting worse and worse. Chapter 211. The Wang family's pill master didn't expect his young master to stoop to the same level as a rogue cultivator in the mortal market. It was too shameful, but he couldn't persuade the young master to stop. He wanted to leave, but there was still a distinguished guest of the Wang family nearby. The Wang family's pill master felt inferior to this esteemed guest. He had just learned how to refine late blood condensation pills, but this esteemed guest was only in his 30s. Despite being a late blood condensation cultivator, he could already refine half-step core forging pills. After interacting with this esteemed guest for the past few days, the Wang family's pill master felt that his knowledge and experience were far inferior to this esteemed guest. The Wang family's pill master saw the distinguished guest watching his eldest young master quarrel with a group of rogue cultivators with a smile on his face. He had no choice but to accompany the distinguished guest awkwardly. From time to time, he would say a few words to mediate, but it often had the opposite effect. At this time, someone in the market shouted, "Senior Liu is here. Master Immortal Liu is here." The rogue cultivators who were quarreling with eldest young Master Wang dispersed one after another. They took their harvests from their stalls and ran towards the young man who brought a child into the market. The one in front was the person who the honored guest had previously wanted to purchase the spirit grass, but was unable to obtain it. Later on, he had helped his young master quarrel with him. The man exchanged a few words with the newcomer before handing over all of the spirit herbs that the esteemed guest had taken a fancy to the young cultivator. Then, he took something that the young cultivator had given him and hurriedly left in a somewhat excited manner. Grand Wang young master was instantly enraged. He was about to step forward and argue with the young man, but he was suddenly stopped by someone. When Grand Wang young master turned his head to look, It was the distinguished guest who stopped him. Grand Wang Young Master's exasperated expression immediately changed. He forced a smile and said, "Brother Liang, why are you doing this?" The silver-robed cultivator shook his head and didn't say anything. He walked towards the young man. Lu Ping was looking at the spirit herbs in the hands of an old mortal cultivator. The silver-robed cultivator suddenly walked towards him and said, "It seems like this fellow Taoist is also a pill master. However, the spirit herbs in this old man's hands are what I urgently need to concoct a batch of pills. I wonder if fellow Taoist is willing to part with them?" Lu Ping glanced at the silver-robed cultivator and calmly asked, "Mimosa is quite useful for breaking through bottlenecks. Fellow Taoist wants to concoct a pill that can help break through to the core forging stage?" The silver-robed cultivator was startled. He looked at Lu Ping with a trace of respect and said, "Fellow Taoist, your knowledge is indeed extraordinary. May I know your name? Which sector you from?" "I am Liang Shirlan from the Crystal Palace. Nice to meet you." Lu Ping sneered inwardly. He was going to use his status to intimidate others. So he said, "My surname is Lu, and I'm ranked 9th. I'm just a free cultivator, not worth mentioning." As soon as Lu Ping finished speaking, the silver-robed cultivator's gaze clearly lightened. The middle-aged cultivator next to him also became more relaxed. The young man who was the loudest was walking over. When he heard Lu Ping's words, he sneered and said, "You sure have a lot of power in this market. I thought this market belonged to you." Lu Ping saw that this person was arrogant and spoke without any scruples. He guessed that this person was a playboy without much experience in dealing with people. He was probably a disciple of one of the 3 big clans. Lu Ping ignored him and said to the silver-robed cultivator, "This mimosa happens to be of use to me. I'm sorry." The silver-robed cultivator didn't think that after he said the name Crystal Palace, this person still wouldn't let go. This was clearly not something a loose cultivator would do. This person was not simple. Lu Ping didn't think that because he rejected the silver-robed cultivator, just because this mimosa was one of the main ingredients of the 7-step marked pill that he had just obtained a few days ago, the silver-robed cultivator unintentionally looked up to him. Because Master Wang was a step slower, he had been standing behind the silver-robed cultivator. His previous sarcastic words were ignored by Lu Ping, and he was already very dissatisfied with Lu Ping. As a disciple of a big clan, he was born to be flattered by others. Everything he did was self-centered, and he was used to being in the limelight. Now, not only was the guest that he couldn't afford to offend ignoring his words, even this loose cultivator in front of him treated him as if he didn't exist. In addition to the dispute with the group of loose cultivators earlier, he instantly vented his anger on Lu Ping. "Kid, don't think that you can pretend to be a pill refiner just because you know a few spiritual herbs. Do you think it's that easy to pretend to be a pill refiner? Besides, you're just a loose cultivator. Even if you became a pill refiner by luck, how can you compare to Brother Liang? Brother Liang is a pill refiner from the Crystal Palace. He's a blood condensation realm alchemist who can refine half-step core forging realm pills. This mimosa will only be a waste in your hands. Since you're a loose cultivator with shallow knowledge, how many spirit stones did you use to exchange for this spiritual herb? My Wang clan will add another 1,000 spirit stones to give you face." Lu Ping was puzzled. No matter how domineering a cultivator was, he was still a late blood condensation realm cultivator. How could a late blood condensation realm cultivator do such a thing in public? Wouldn't he be making enemies out of his own clan? Lu Ping didn't understand what was going on. It had to be said that the Wang clan was not the kind of loose cultivator clan that did a one-off business. Rather, it was a cultivator clan that had taken root here. They were particular about prosperity and harmony. In the world of cultivation, there were both open spears and covert attacks. From a young age, the members of the clan had been taught what they could and could not do. This was so that they would not provoke those they should not provoke and bring disaster to the clan. Lu Ping was still wondering why this young master was targeting him. On the other side, the Wang clan's pill refiner had already tugged on Grand Wang clan's clothes, hinting that he might offend someone with his words. Just when Grand Wang clan's young master realized what was going on, he heard a woman's voice coming from afar. She sneered, "Grand Wang clan's young master is really generous. I thought you were going to say, how many spirit stones do you want for this herb? My Wang clan will double the price, but you only added 1,000 spirit stones. Grand Wang clan's young master's face darkened. Zhang Shenkuan, since you're here, show yourself. Don't sneak around and embarrass the 4 young masters of the 3 family cities. A gurgling sound could be heard. A woman dressed like a man and a cultivator dressed like a scholar walked over together. The people along the way made way for them. Clearly, these 2 were not ordinary people. They were probably disciples of the Zhang clan. Zhang Shenkuan continued, this title of 4 young masters is just a title given by the cultivators in the 3 family cities. Big brother and I have never thought that we are worthy of such a title. I believe Sister Xiaozhu from the Li clan feels the same way. I'm afraid only you, Grand Wang clan's young master, can't forget this title. This one doesn't dare to be called for young masters. But this one also doesn't dare to have a sister like Zhang Shenkuan. At some unknown time, the Li clan's young miss, Xiaozhu, also arrived at the mortal market. She was dressed in a professional attire and had a valiant aura around her. Lu Ping took advantage of the fact that all of the cultivators in the mortal market were attracted by the 4 young cultivators of the 3 family cities and inadvertently retreated to the side. This scene was becoming more and more interesting. Chapter 212. Just as Li Xiaozhu finished speaking, Zhang Shenkuan giggled and said, the Li clan's elder sister is always so unreasonable. No wonder my eldest brother is so devoted to elder sister, but he always finds it hard to make elder sister smile. The cultivator beside Zhang Shenkuan blushed and scolded with a smile. You little girl, is there a sister who would ridicule her own brother like you? Wang Yishan didn't expect that a mimosa would attract the attention of the 4 most famous young cultivators of the 3 family cities. Hearing Li Xiaozhu's words, his expression changed. Among the 3 family cities, the Zhang family was the most powerful. The Wang family and Li family had always worked together to resist the 3 families. Although Li Xiaozhu was arrogant in the past, he still cared about Wang Yishan's face. Today, it seemed like he was targeting the Zhang family brother and sister, but in reality, he had also thrown away Wang Yishan's face. Wang Yishan glanced at the silver-robed cultivator beside him thoughtfully. Coincidentally, the silver-robed cultivator was also looking at him. Wang Yishan quickly put on a smile and nodded at the silver-robed cultivator. After calming down, Wang Yishan finally regained his ability to think. The 4 people's auras were divided into 3 groups, and they refused to give way to each other. Immediately, the market became turbulent. Everyone avoided each other, unwilling to get involved in the fight between the 3 families' forces. With the Zhang family brother and sister working together, they naturally had the upper hand. In the past, Wang Yishan and Li Xiaozhu would choose to work together to fight against the Zhang family brother and sister. Today, however, Li Xiaozhu came alone. There was no sign of him working together with Wang Yishan. Wang Yishan was the weakest among the 4. After a short while, he was at a disadvantage. Under the pressure of the 3 people's auras, his face turned red and he took a step back. The Wang family's alchemist was a little anxious. After all, Wang Yishan represented the Wang family. If he embarrassed himself in front of others, the Wang family would lose face. However, he was considered one of the older generation in the Wang family. It was not good for him to interfere in a fight between the younger generation. Thus, he looked at the silver-robed cultivator for help. The silver-robed cultivator chuckled and took a step forward. Magic power surged from his body. Surprisingly, he was also a peak blood condensation cultivator. The 2 of them worked together to push back the incoming aura. The Zhang siblings looked at the calm silver-robed cultivator with solemn expressions. The silver-robed cultivator was clearly not going all out. Now, Li Xiaozhu had become the weakest link. Naturally, the Zhang siblings would not mind letting her suffer a bit. Wang Yishan's face was also gloomy. He secretly hated Li Xiaozhu for not giving him face earlier. The mortal old man beside Lu Ping was already trembling in fear. To him, it was as if the gods were fighting and the mortals were the ones to suffer the consequences. Lu Ping knew that this mimosa was not something a mortal should have. After thinking for a moment, he whispered a few words to the old man and handed him a few spirit stones. Although the old man was a mortal, He knew that the thing in his hand had become a life-threatening object. Just as he was hesitating, he heard Lu Ping's words and quickly took the spirit stones. He happily handed the jade box in his hand to Lu Ping and jogged away. He did not look old at all. When the four young masters saw Lu Ping put the mimosa into a jade box, the Zhang and Wang family cultivators' expressions immediately changed. At this time, Li Xiuzhu was the one in the most difficult situation. This capable woman was quite unyielding. Under the pressure of the four young masters' auras, she was already drenched in sweat. She was like a lamp without oil, but she did not take a single step back. Lu Ping sighed. He knew that ever since he accepted the Li family's invitation, he was already considered a member of the Li family in the eyes of the other two families. Moreover, he had been staying in the Li family's inn. In order to concoct the 7-step marked pill, he would have to visit the Li family frequently. The three families' cities might be big, but it was not far for cultivators. News of what happened in the mortal market spread throughout the city in the blink of an eye. Many cultivators rushed to the mortal market to watch the show. Lu Ping took a step towards Li Xiuzhu. In the end, he decided to lend Li Xiuzhu a hand. So it's someone from the Li family. This person is overestimating himself. This is a battle between 5 peak blood condensation experts. He's only at the 7th layer of the blood condensation realm. Isn't he just looking for trouble? That might not be the case. Maybe he wants to play the hero and save the damsel in distress. You probably don't know about this. This person often appears in the shops selling spiritual herbs in the city. He also frequently comes to the mortal market to trade for spiritual herbs. He should be an alchemist. That's right. This person has a good reputation in the mortal market. He never purposely lowers the price of spiritual herbs. He also often gives some pointers about spiritual herbs. His price is also considered fair. This person has already joined the Li family. Someone saw him accepting the Li family's invitation and entering the Li family's manor. When the Zhang siblings and Wang Yishan saw that Lu Ping was overestimating himself and actually wanted to interfere in their game, they looked at Lu Ping mockingly. They were waiting for him to make a fool of himself. When Li Xiuzhu saw Lu Ping acting like this, he wanted to warn him. However, the Zhang and Wang clans seemed to want to see Lu Ping make a fool of himself. They simultaneously increased the pressure of their auras. Li Xiuzhu opened his mouth, but no words came out. Lu Ping didn't have much interest in these games of battle qi. Not to mention, his divine sense cultivation base and arcane energy cultivation base allowed him to stand up to a mid-core forging realm enlightened Master Xianjing's aura during the apprenticeship ceremony. Not to mention, he was still able to speak. A few peak blood condensation cultivators were nothing to him. Just as everyone was waiting to see Lu Ping make a fool of himself, the Zhang and Wang clans gradually withdrew their mocking attitude. From their divine sense, they could sense that after Lu Ping stepped into Li Xiuzhu's group, the Li family's aura suddenly became like an unfathomable lake. No matter how hard the cultivators from both sides tried, they could only create a few ripples on the surface of the lake. At this moment, Li Xiuzhu was also quite surprised to see this cultivator in front of him, who seemed to be slightly younger than him. When Lu Ping stepped into the range of his aura, his nearly exhausted aura suddenly seemed to be injected with a stream of fresh water. Li Xiuzhu, who was standing on the edge of the cliff, was suddenly pulled back. Looking at the cliff behind him, he only felt waves of lingering fear. When the surrounding cultivators saw that Lu Ping was able to resist the combined pressure of the two sides with ease after joining the battle, they all had expressions of amazement on their faces. From Lu Ping's point of view, although these people were all at the peak of the blood condensation realm, only Li Xiuzhu and the silver-robed cultivator's strength had reached the level of the 18 generals of the North Sea. Although the Zhang siblings were not bad, compared to Li Xiuzhu, they were still slightly inferior. Wang Yishan's strength was the weakest. Obviously, it was because he didn't have a solid foundation. A peak blood condensation cultivator like him would only be looking for trouble if he encountered Lu Ping. Lu Ping didn't reveal too much of his strength. When he saw that both sides had retreated, he turned around and smiled at Miss Li. Without looking back, he walked towards his cave abode. Behind him, a little brat followed from afar. Li Xiuzhu stared at Lu Ping's back. No one knew what he was thinking. Then, He turned around and gave the Zhang and Wang families a cold look before leaving as well. Wang Yishan gritted his teeth and was about to say something when he saw the distinguished guest beside him finally put away his previously calm expression and walked towards the Wang family. Wang Yishan was startled. He hurriedly called for his family's pill refiner to catch up with him. The Zhang siblings looked at each other, their eyes flashing. No one knew what they were talking about. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared, leaving only the cultivators who had come to watch the commotion. Only a few of the more observant cultivators had their own thoughts when they saw the strange scene in the wandering cultivators' market. For a time, undercurrents were surging in the three families' cities. Visible and invisible forces, both inside and outside the islands, were playing games with each other. Even the mortals gradually noticed that the atmosphere in the city had become strange. At the same time, the Li family's new disciple, Lu Jiao, also entered the sights of the three family cities. Another half a month later, Lu Ping was led to an inconspicuous shop in the center of the three clan cities by the young lady of the Li clan, who looked like a man. There was also an alchemist nurtured by the Li clan. He was a middle-aged cultivator with a fiery red face. Along the way, he didn't speak much with Lu Ping. Clearly, he was doubtful that a young 7th-layer blood condensation realm cultivator like Lu Ping could concoct half-step core forging realm medicinal pellets. But since he was highly valued by the clan master and the young miss, he didn't say anything. After all, he was only proficient in mid-blood condensation realm medicinal pellets. His success rate for late blood condensation realm medicinal pellets was only 20% to 30%, far from the standard of half-step core forging realm medicinal pellets. This is the place where the underground trade fair is held? Lu Ping looked at the shabby shop in front of him with uncertainty. If Li Xiaozhu hadn't brought him here, he definitely wouldn't have noticed that this shop was actually the entrance to the underground trade fair. Most of the people on the three families island were rogue cultivators. Most of them were brave cultivators who often ventured out to sea. Although the three families had the Zhang, Wang, and Li families' influence on the island, these three families obviously couldn't compare to some of the big sects and families on the three families island. As a result, whenever the three families cities held an auction, it would always be accompanied by a bloody storm. In the end, the three family cities canceled the auction and instead established a secret underground trade fair. Lu Ping followed Li Xiaozhu into the shop and received 3 cloaks from a hunchbacked old cultivator. Li Xiaozhu took one and draped it over his body. Not only did it cover his appearance, but when Lu Ping used his spiritual sense to investigate it, he found that the cloak contained a powerful magic power that hindered Lu Ping's spiritual sense. This was a good thing. Lu Ping took the cloak and draped it over his body. Unfortunately, this cloak could only hide his identity and not his whereabouts. The three of them came to an empty room behind the shop. A complex array formation had been engraved on the floor of the empty room. Lu Ping knew that this was a short-distance teleportation array. It seemed that the place where the trade fair was held was a secret. However, the three families should know where the trade fair was held. Li Xiaozhu inserted dozens of spirit stones into the array formation. The hunchbacked old man then activated the array formation. With a flash of white light, the three of them disappeared from the empty room. The hunchbacked old man slowly walked out of the room and came to the shop, waiting for the next batch of cultivators to participate in the underground trade fair. He was about to doze off when he seemed to have thought of something. He hurriedly struggled to stand up from the chair and said, "I almost forgot that there's also the throwing a brick to attract jade format. Sigh. It's not easy to earn spirit stones." As enlightened master by spoke, he took out a jade box from his pocket and opened it. He placed it on the stone table in the center of the platform and said, "I was chased by a big bird on my way here, so I had no choice but to kill it. I'm quite lucky to have obtained 9 condensed blood pearls of the wood and wind attribute. Those who want them can exchange with 1,000-year spiritual herbs. I'll exchange one for 20 spiritual herbs for 20 spiritual herbs, and I'll exchange one for 4 spiritual herbs for the main ingredient. Hee, the precious spiritual herbs will be given priority, and the ones with the most quantity will be given priority. Let's begin." Enlightened Master Bai was indeed a core-forging Enlightened Master. He immediately brought out 9 condensed blood pearls, attracting the attention of most of the cultivators in the cave. After all, most of the cultivators here were in the late blood condensation realm, so the core-forging realm was not far away for them. Everyone started bidding according to their number. Not long after, 3 people had exchanged their 1,000-year spiritual herbs for 4 of the condensed blood pearls. Lu Ping was sitting at number 57, so it was not his turn to bid. He did not want the condensed blood pearls at all, so he did not participate in the bidding. He already had a plan for Lu Ping to advance to the core-forging realm. A moment later, another 3 condensed blood pearls were exchanged. At this moment, the cultivators in the trade fair had increased the number of items exchanged to 25 spiritual herbs for supplementary spiritual herbs or 5 spiritual herbs. Lu Ping was secretly speechless. These cultivators who participated in the trade fair were quite wealthy. Jinren Bai's condensed blood beads set off a climax as soon as it appeared. He put away more than 100 ordinary 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs and close to 20 rare 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs in satisfaction. He waved his hand for the others to come in order. Then he sat on the chair and began to doze off. With perfected being Bai's example, although the other cultivators could not compare to perfected being Bai's generosity, they still tried their best to exchange some of their important items. Hence, they were much less unreliable, making everyone feel that their trip was worthwhile. The cultivator sitting at the first seat took out a top-grade magic tool and asked for some late blood condensation pills. If there were none, mid-blood condensation pills would do. This top-grade magic tool was worth about 40,000 spirit stones. If it was used to exchange for ordinary late blood condensation pills, it could be exchanged for about 10 bottles. If it was mid-blood condensation pills, it could be exchanged for close to 20 bottles. Although Lu Ping had some in stock, it was not enough for his own cultivation. Naturally, he would not exchange for it. Moreover, he did not lack top-grade magic tools at the moment. In the end, this attack-type top-grade magic tool was exchanged for 2 bottles of late blood condensation pills, 6 bottles of mid-blood condensation pills, and 20,000 spirit stones. Following that, the cultivators on the stage displayed all kinds of spiritual materials, spirit ores, spiritual herbs, magic tools, pills, secret techniques, pill recipes, cultivation techniques, spells, and so on. Other than the spiritual herbs that appeared, Lu Ping was not interested in anything else. Thus, he did not gain much. The 19th cultivator took out a jade box from his storage pouch and said, "It's very rare for us Sea Realm cultivators to encounter Earth attribute demonic beasts. I was fortunate enough to encounter a 4th layer blood condensation realm pangolin demonic beast. After killing it, I obtained these 4 condensed blood pearls from the tiger bloodline. I hope they can be exchanged for some mid and late blood condensation realm cultivation pills or a top-grade fire attribute defensive artifact." Although Earth-type Yao beasts with tiger bloodlines were rare in the ocean region, there were not many cultivators who cultivated Earth-type cultivation techniques in the ocean region. Thus, despite the rarity of the 4 condensed blood beads, they were not that expensive. At most, they were worth around 40,000 to 50,000 spirit stones. Using them to exchange for a top-grade defensive magic artifact was somewhat of a stretch. Seeing this, Lu Ping was overjoyed. Debao had finally reached the peak of the early blood condensation realm. Initially, Lu Ping was still worried about him breaking through to the mid-blood condensation realm. He had been collecting spiritual herbs to concoct the barrier-breaking pills for him. Now, all his efforts were in vain. Whether it was the foundation bloodline or the attribute of cultivation, these 4 condensed blood pearls were suitable for Debao's breakthrough. At this time, someone had already sent a voice transmission talisman to the cultivator to discuss the matter. Lu Ping counted the mid-stage blood condensation pills he had on hand. Seeing that this person cultivated a fire-type cultivation technique, he specially picked out a few bottles of blood spirit pills that he concocted using the fire-type condensed blood spirit pills. He hadn't used them because their attributes were incompatible with each other. Now, he could finally use them. Naturally, Lu Ping wouldn't give away all the pills he had. Instead, he quoted a price of 10 bottles of mid-stage blood condensation pills and 15,000 spirit stones. He specifically pointed out that 5 of the bottles were blood spirit pills that were specially concocted for fire-type cultivators. As expected, the moment Lu Ping's voice transmission talisman was sent over, cultivator number 19 replied, 15 bottles of mid-stage blood condensation pills and 10,000 spirit stones. The more fire-type blood spirit pills, the better. We can discuss further. Lu Ping smiled faintly and replied, I can only add 2 more bottles of pills and 12,000 spirit stones. A few moments later, the cultivator on the stage declined the other cultivators who were bidding. Instead, he sent a voice transmission talisman to Lu Ping and said, Deal. Lu Ping used a storage bag to store 12 bottles of pills and 12,000 spirit stones. The storage bag flew into the cultivator's hand. The cultivator scanned it with his divine sense, and a satisfied expression appeared on his face. Then, he tossed the jade box in his hand to Lu Ping. Chapter 2:14. The underground trade fair continued. On the stage, cultivator number 26 actually took out a talisman treasure to be auctioned. One should know that talisman treasures were a life-saving trump card for blood condensation realm cultivators. Lu Ping himself had used talisman treasures several times to escape from powerful enemies or defeat them. This talisman treasure was a defensive-type talisman treasure. Generally speaking, defensive-type magic treasures were more valuable. However, for talismans, offensive talismans were more practical. After all, talismans were the last trump cards of blood condensation cultivators. One was to defeat the enemy, and the other was to escape. From these two purposes, offensive talismans were more practical. Even so, this talisman treasure still caused a commotion among the cultivators present. Lu Ping was no exception. He had already used up all his talismans. Without a trump card, it was inevitable that he would feel a lack of confidence. However, this cultivator needed at least 2 top-grade spiritual materials. Lu Ping checked his own storage ring. There were a few top-grade spiritual materials inside. They were all obtained from the Flying Spirit Island's refining hall and Lu Ping's spoils of war. Lu Ping thought for a moment, then took out a sound transmission talisman. He wrote down the names of Deep Sea Cold Steel and Fong Lingshi and passed it to the cultivator on the stage. At this time, the cultivator had already received several sound transmission talismans. He was looking through them one by one, occasionally replying to 1 or 2. A moment later, Lu Ping also received a reply. If you have 2 more top-grade spiritual materials or top-grade second-grade spiritual materials, I can trade with you first. Lu Ping sneered. This person was starting to raise the price. Second-grade spiritual materials were the first choice for most cultivators. It wasn't something that could be exchanged with an early-stage core-forging defensive talisman. Even if he had 3 or 4 top-grade spiritual materials, Lu Ping still felt that it wasn't worth it. As expected, after the cultivator sent out several sound transmission talismans, there was no reply. Seeing that a treasure that was originally highly sought after was ignored, the cultivator couldn't help but feel anxious. He took out a few sound transmission talismans and sent them back. Lu Ping also received one. This time, it said that he only needed 3 top-grade spiritual materials. After receiving the sound transmission talismans, Lu Ping ignored it. This time, it was time for the other cultivators to return the money. As expected, only 2 or 3 sound transmission talismans returned. Although Lu Ping couldn't see the cultivator's expression under the cloak, he could guess that it must be very interesting. After a while, the cultivator replied with a few sound transmission talismans. Lu Ping received one and opened it. I am willing to trade with you for the Deep Sea Cold Steel and Fongling Stone. You only need to add 10,000 spirit stones or 2 bottles of late blood condensation pills. This price was more or less reasonable, but Lu Ping wouldn't use pills to exchange for it. Thus, he sent the Fongling Stone, Deep Sea Cold Steel, and 10,000 spirit stones over. A moment later, the cultivator sent the talisman to Lu Ping. This talisman contained a defensive spell for early core forging cultivators. It was called Thousand Spirit Wall. Although the name sounded impressive, it was actually a protective spiritual light. After activating it, the cultivator's body would be wrapped in a layer of spiritual light, just like a protective astral chi. However, The effect was naturally much stronger than a protective astral chi. While Lu Ping was admiring the talisman treasures in his hands, the trade fair had already reached the 43rd cultivator. He walked onto the stage and took out 7 high-grade spirit stones from his interspatial pouch. Hee, I came across a fortuitous encounter and obtained 7 high-grade spirit stones. I'm willing to exchange them for some late blood condensation medicinal pellets or second-grade top-grade spirit materials. If you can't find them, I'm willing to exchange them for some spirit stones. When the cultivator took out the 7 high-grade spirit stones, Lu Ping couldn't sit still. High-grade spirit stones had many additional uses. Although the spiritual energy contained in high-grade spirit stones was only equivalent to 100 mid-grade spirit stones, high-grade spirit stones could be used for alchemy, artifact forging, talismans, formations, and so on. Therefore, the actual value of each high-grade spirit stone was much higher than 10,000 spirit stones. Over the years, although Lu Ping had collected 7 or 8 high-grade spirit stones, he had already used up 5 or 6 high-grade spirit stones in the process of concocting medicinal pellets. Hence, he was in dire need of high-grade spirit stones. For example, when Lu Ping was concocting the heart-dissolving pellet, he was missing a 1,000-year-old spirit herb that was worth around 2,000 spirit stones. Hence, he had to replace it with a high-grade spirit stone. Although it was a waste, it ensured that the heart-dissolving pellet wouldn't fail due to a missing spirit herb. Lu Ping sent out a voice transmission talisman. The price was 100,000 spirit stones. However, the cultivator's voice transmission talismans flew towards the cultivator on the stage like snowflakes. Lu Ping was stunned. Only then did he realize that he had underestimated the power of high-grade spirit stones. Lu Ping rummaged through his storage ring again and suddenly saw a crystal whip. This must be a top-grade magic tool that he had obtained from the Overflowing Seas Gang's Hall Master. Its attributes were suitable for Lu Ping. However, Lu Ping had always been a swordsman. Moreover, this crystal whip was too eye-catching, so it was not convenient for him to use it. Lu Ping took out another voice transmission talisman and said, "A top-grade magic tool, crystal whip. 5 high-grade spirit stones will be enough." The cultivator on the stage clearly did not expect the 7 spirit stones to be so popular among the cultivators. Even Perfected By, who was sitting at the side, opened his eyes and glanced at the cultivator on the stage. He lowered his head and muttered to himself for a moment, but eventually, he closed his eyes and returned to his half-asleep state. The cultivators on the stage obviously noticed Perfected By's action. Seeing that he seemed to have his eyes on the 7 high-grade spirit stones, everyone felt uneasy. If Perfected By were to make a move, nobody would have the guts to compete with him, not to mention that a core forging Perfected Master's wealth was far greater than everyone else's. Even if Perfected By offered a moderate price, nobody would have the guts to compete with him. The cultivators on the stage were obviously more concerned about the second point. When Perfected By opened his eyes, their hands froze. Seeing that Perfected By closed his eyes to rest again, they quickly sent back a few voice transmission talismans. Lu Ping received the voice transmission talisman immediately. It was an exorbitant price, 7 high-grade spirit stones for the crystal whip and 100,000 spirit stones. Lu Ping secretly cursed. These cultivators really dared to offer high prices. Initially, he wanted to reject them, but he really could not bear to part with the 7 spirit stones. One must know that high-grade spirit stones were usually used by perfected masters and Laozu in the cultivation world. Even perfected masters would not have too many high-grade spirit stones. This was also why Perfected By was tempted by the few high-grade spirit stones just now. After a few rounds of bargaining, Lu Ping finally exchanged the crystal whip for 4 high-grade spirit stones, while the other 3 were exchanged with cultivator number 72. Out of reluctance, Lu Ping glanced at cultivator number 72. Coincidentally, cultivator number 72's cloak was also tilted towards Lu Ping's direction. This cultivator had exchanged for spirit herbs and the like several times before. Some of them were spirit herbs that ordinary cultivators could not use. Therefore, Lu Ping was almost sure that the other party was also a pill refinement master. Perfected By, who was resting with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. He glanced at cultivator number 72, and then looked at Lu Ping suspiciously. He then lowered his head and pondered about something, as if he had found something wrong, but he was not too sure. Lu Ping, on the other hand, was shocked and furious at the same time. Just when he was being stared at by cultivator number 72, Lu Ping's spirit sense suddenly discovered a slight spiritual power fluctuation on his body. When Lu Ping wanted to find out the source, the fluctuation disappeared without a trace. Lu Ping dared not be careless for a moment after being on the verge of death for a few times. He carefully checked his entire body with his spirit sense, but he did not find anything wrong. Lu Ping was not at ease. Just when Lu Ping sensed the mysterious fluctuation, Perfected By was looking at Lu Ping suspiciously. It was obvious that Perfected By had sensed something, but he got nothing in the end. The more Lu Ping thought about it, the more gloomy his face became. Could it be that a core forging sage had already sneaked into this cave to avoid Perfected By's spirit sense? He was being stared at by a core forging sage. Immediately, Lu Ping was shocked by his own thoughts. Lu Ping, who had personally fought with a core forging sage, knew these sages' methods very well. Lu Ping contracted all of his spirit sense and merged it layer by layer. He built a thick spirit sense wall around his body and began to check his entire body layer by layer. Lu Ping did not hide the intense fluctuation of his spirit sense on purpose. He could not hide it completely. Anyway, with the cloak covering him, Lu Ping was not afraid that the cultivators in the cave would discover his identity. Strictly speaking, the exploration range of Lu Ping's spirit sense was no weaker than a core forging sage who had never cultivated spirit sense or spirit sense. It was just that spirit sense was more profound than spirit sense. Even though Lu Ping's spirit sense was powerful, it was still far from spirit sense. However, when Lu Ping completely compressed his spirit sense, which was more than 200 meters wide, around his body, this forced method made Lu Ping's perception of himself almost no longer inferior to spirit sense. Found it. Under the edge of Lu Ping's cloak, a faintly discernible and extremely obscure spirit sense was finally captured by Lu Ping. At this moment, Lu Ping did not feel the slightest joy in his heart. On the contrary, a chill suddenly wrapped around Lu Ping from head to toe. This was indeed a tracking method that only a core forging sage could use. The spirit sense that supported this restriction was also the true essence of a core forging sage. After a blood condensation cultivator advanced to the core forging realm, their magic power would successfully transform into true essence. Lu Ping immediately used his spirit sense to attack this restriction in an attempt to disintegrate the spirit sense. At this moment, he no longer cared about what kind of shock his spirit sense would bring to the cultivators present. This action of Lu Ping suddenly formed a tide of spirit sense around him. While the cultivators marveled at Lu Ping's exquisite spirit sense cultivation, they also secretly wondered why Lu Ping was like this. Chapter 215. Perhaps there were only two people present who understood what Lu Ping was doing. One of them was cultivator number 72. Even though he was wearing a cloak, his cloak kept twisting towards Lu Ping's direction. On the surface, he looked no different from the other cultivators. However, Lu Ping knew that he had loosened the tracking restriction due to the continuous attacks of his divine consciousness. Every time his divine consciousness loosened a restriction, the cultivator would twist his cloak towards Lu Ping. As for the other cultivator, it was Enlightened Master Bai. As the only Enlightened Master in the cave, Enlightened Master Bai scanned Lu Ping's location with his divine sense. Naturally, he knew what Lu Ping was doing. He glanced at Lu Ping, then at cultivator number 72. For some unknown reason, he closed his eyes and fell asleep again, as if everything happening in the cave had nothing to do with him. This was also the reason why Lu Ping did not ask Perfected By for help after he realized that he was being plotted against. Lu Ping did not know if this was considered as an unspoken rule of the underground trade fair, but Perfected By was only a representative sent by the Northern Alliance. His symbolic meaning was greater than his actual meaning. Once the trade fair ended and he got out of the crypt, Lu Ping would naturally become someone else's prey. As long as he did not attack in the crypt, Perfected By would clearly not offend another potential core forging perfected person for him. The cloak on Lu Ping's body kept fluttering under the waves of divine consciousness. The tracking restriction on the cloak kept loosening and disintegrating. Suddenly, a tearing sound was heard. The divine consciousness restriction was finally removed from the cloak by Lu Ping. However, at the same time, a part of the formation on the cloak that concealed a cultivator's aura was also removed. Lu Ping's aura immediately leaked out from the broken formation. Dozens of divine consciousness in the crypt swarmed towards Lu Ping like sharks that smelled blood. They wanted to see the true identity of this cultivator who caused such a huge commotion in the crypt. As soon as the array formation on his cloak was erased, Lu Ping noticed something was wrong. He immediately cast the spirit concealment spell to conceal his presence and change his cultivation base. At the same time, he formed a shield wall with his divine sense to block them from probing him. When the cultivator's divine senses penetrated through the broken array formation, they could feel Lu Ping's aura suddenly changing. Then, his aura gradually weakened. Lu Ping's cultivation base dropped from 7th layer blood condensation realm to 6th layer, 5th layer, and finally 4th layer before it stabilized. As the cultivators stared in shock, Lu Ping used his divine consciousness to completely seal off the holes on the cloak, cutting off the other cultivators from probing him. Then, he turned his attention back to the cultivators who were trading on the platform. At that moment, the trade had reached the 56th cultivator. Next, it was Lu Ping's turn. Before this, Lu Ping had been focused on dealing with the divine consciousness imprint on his body. Naturally, he missed a lot of treasures. When it was Lu Ping's turn, everyone was looking forward to it. They wanted to see how this cultivator who caused such a huge commotion would perform. Lu Ping had quite a lot of items with him. However, those who could come here were the elites of the blood condensation realm. Lu Ping had quite a number of high-grade magic artifacts. However, only top-grade magic artifacts could attract enough attention in a situation like this. This caused Lu Ping's original plan to dispose of his stolen goods to fall through. No matter how he thought about it, it could only be pills. However, Lu Ping was clearly reluctant to trade late-stage blood condensation pills. Lu Ping walked to the platform with a jade box in his hand. Under everyone's expectant gaze, he opened the jade box. Inside were 10 blood condensation pills that he had prepared beforehand. As expected, the crowd gasped. Before coming here, Lu Ping had only concocted one batch of blood condensation pills. Lu Ping's pill concoction skills had been improving. His success rate of concocting blood condensation pills, which were as difficult as late-stage blood condensation pills, had reached 70%. In addition to Lu Ping's previous spoils of war, gathering 10 blood condensation pills was not a problem. Before the crowd could speak, Perfected by suddenly sat up straight. "Kid, you're a pill concoction master?" Lu Ping did not dare to be slow. He quickly replied, "I was lucky enough to gather a few batches of pills and managed to gather this bottle of pills." Perfected by nodded. "That's rare. Kid, are you interested in working for the Northern Alliance? Old Bai, recommend you to join the Northern Alliance's pill hall." Although he couldn't see the faces of the crowd, Lu Ping's divine sense was able to pick up some clues. He could tell that the North Alliance's alchemy hall was an extraordinary place. In fact, Lu Ping's previous understanding of the East Sea was that the East Sea represented the highest standard of the overseas cultivation world. It was almost on par with the Middle Earth and far surpassed the current situation of the North Sea's cultivation world. After coming to the East Sea, Lu Ping had a better understanding of the East Sea. However, the East Sea was not peaceful. Other than the Crystal Palace, which was the overlord of the East Sea, there were other powerful sects and organizations. Naturally, they could not be compared to the Crystal Palace, but each of them was definitely stronger than the major sects in the North Sea. The Northern Alliance was one of them. The northern part of the East Sea was a relatively barren area in the East Sea. There were no major sects and inheritances here. Over time, it became a paradise for independent cultivators. Later on, sensing that independent cultivators were weaker than the major sects in the East Sea led by the Crystal Palace, the independent cultivators in the sea and some small and medium-sized sects and families joined forces to form the Northern Alliance of Independent Cultivators. After thousands of years, They built a mature and perfect inheritance system to compete with the major sects in the East Sea. It could be said that in the Northern Sea, the Northern Alliance was the final destination that all independent cultivators yearned for. There, they could obtain perfect inheritance and protection. They would no longer have to wander around and cultivate by groping for stones to cross the river. Of course, everyone also knew that there was no point in being envious. After all, Lu Ping was an alchemist. The current state of the cultivation world and the price one had to pay to become an alchemist had determined the lofty status of an alchemist. No matter where they went, they would be welcomed by all forces. Lu Ping was obviously prepared for such a situation. He bowed slightly and said, "Thank you for your appreciation, Senior. However, I am used to living a free life. I have no plans to join any forces at the moment." Enlightened Master Bai did not pester him. Firstly, he was wary of Lu Ping's identity as an enlightened master. Secondly, he was wary of Lu Ping's identity as a pill master. Hence, he said, "Oh, that's a pity. If I want to join a force and enjoy life in the future, you can come to the Northern Alliance and look for the old man in the Cicada Hall of the Cicada sect." Lu Ping bowed again and thanked him. Then, he turned to the others in the cave and said, 10 blood-condensing pills. I will only exchange them for spiritual herbs. 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs will be prioritized. 1 pill for 2,000-year-old spiritual herbs, or 8 supplementary spiritual herbs. If you don't have any 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs, you can use the spiritual herbs used to concoct blood-condensing pills. 1 pill for 12 spiritual herbs. As for the other 500-year-old spiritual herbs, I will only choose those that can be used to concoct late blood condensation pills. Chapter 216. The blood-condensing pill was an essential item for any group or organization of cultivators. It meant that a group or organization could grow healthy and strong. It also meant that they could pass on and nurture their reserves. Lu Ping intentionally raised the requirements for the blood-condensing pill. In large sects, such as Zhengling, as long as a disciple could gather 8 stalks of blood-condensing pill, they could exchange for 1 blood-condensing pill from the sect. However, Lu Ping wanted 12 stalks. Even so, the cultivators who exchanged with Lu Ping for the blood-condensing pill were still fighting with each other. Lu Ping initially thought that after Enlightened Master Bai's exchange of 9 condensed blood beads, the cultivators wouldn't have too many 1,000-year-old spirit herbs. But in the end, Lu Ping still underestimated the cultivators. After all, they were the cultivators with the highest hopes of breaking through to the core forging realm on the Three Clans Island. Hence, they had at least a few 1,000-year-old spirit herbs to prepare for their future. As soon as Lu Ping finished speaking, he received more than 10 sound transmission talismans. Lu Ping looked through them carefully. The first talisman asked for 5 blood-condensing pills. However, Lu Ping found that the other party wanted to exchange for the blood-condensing pills were a mix of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs and 500-year-old spirit herbs. There were spirit herbs for both late-stage blood condensation pills and condensed blood pearls. Lu Ping followed the order he said earlier. He picked out a rare 1,000-year-old spirit herb, then chose 12 other 1,000-year-old spirit herbs. After that, he sent 2 condensed blood pearls to the other party. Once again, he told them the order he wanted to pick the spirit herbs. Just like that, Lu Ping used 8 blood-condensing pills to exchange for 3 rare and 28 ordinary 1,000-year-old spirit herbs. On top of that, he also got 36 500-year-old spirit herbs for blood-condensing pills. Just as Lu Ping was about to pick the 500-year-old spirit herbs for late-stage blood condensation pills, a sound transmission talisman suddenly flew over from a cultivator's hand. Lu Ping was startled and looked in the direction of the talisman. A cultivator nodded at Lu Ping, but Lu Ping couldn't find anything under the black cloak. Out of caution, Lu Ping first used his divine sense to cover the talisman. After confirming that there were no problems, he carefully inserted his divine sense into the talisman. After a while, Lu Ping tried his best to maintain a calm expression, but he couldn't help but reveal a hint of excitement in his eyes. Without hesitation, Lu Ping handed the last 2 blood-condensing pellets to the cultivator who sent the last message. The cultivator glanced at the 2 blood-condensing pellets and put them away. Then, he took out a jade slip and flew it to Lu Ping. Lu Ping scanned the jade slip with his divine sense and nodded in satisfaction. He turned around and walked down the stage, ignoring the complaints of the other cultivators. The cultivator who followed Lu Ping took out an item and immediately attracted everyone's attention. Even Lu Ping couldn't help but stop after hearing the cultivator's introduction. He turned around and looked back before returning to his seat. The cultivator continued. Therefore, this 100 flowers baneful energy is a rare treasure of heaven and earth. It is an important choice for cultivators to cultivate their protective astral energy or divine arts. Especially because of its youthful appearance, it is a good choice for female cultivators. I hope to exchange this treasure made from the essence of the 100 flowers baneful energy for 2 pill recipes that can aid in breaking through to the core forging realm, or 2 similar medicinal pills. Lu Ping looked at the 100 flowers baneful energy undulating in the cultivator's hand and curled his lips. The 100 flowers baneful energy was naturally a good item. For cultivators who cultivated wood attribute cultivation methods, the 100 flowers baneful energy could not only purify spiritual energy, but it was also useful for healing injuries. In addition, the 100 flowers baneful energy was similar to the myriad meteorite origin evil chi in that it could also be used to protect against certain poisons. Of course, this was all based on the fact that the 100 flower baneful energy was pure and abundant. However, Lu Ping looked at the 100 flower baneful energy that was only about a foot in size and not much thicker than the fog. If a cultivator used it to condense a skill, the skill wouldn't be that impressive. Compared to the 1,000 poison meteorite energy that Lu Ping used to condense the 1,000 poison meteorite energy, the 100 flower baneful energy was like night and day. Although this 100 flowers baneful energy also had the effect of dispelling poison, after being condensed by a cultivator, if Lu Ling took a bite of it, it would take her 4 to 6 hours to expel the poison. Whether it was quantity or quality, this 100 flowers baneful energy was far inferior to the myriad poison deadly energy. Moreover, the 100 flowers baneful energy's effect was to cure poison, while the myriad poison deadly energy's effect was to devour it. Obviously, they were 2 extremes that restrained each other. Lu Ping was indifferent towards this 100 flowers baneful energy. He just watched the other cultivators on the stage constantly exchanging messages with cultivator number 58 using sound-transmitting talismans. Obviously, there were many cultivators who were interested in this 100 flowers baneful energy. After all, although a heaven and earth extraordinary energy couldn't be compared to a heaven and earth spiritual treasure, it was still a rare item for cultivators. However, looking at cultivator number 58 constantly shaking his head, it was obvious that the transaction did not go smoothly. After all, whether it was a pill recipe or a medicinal pill, it was not easy to obtain a half-step core forging stage cultivator. Even if a cultivator could obtain it, they would treasure it as much as their life. After all, the difference between a divine art and a core forging stage cultivator was self-evident. After many cultivators communicated with cultivator number 58 to no avail, they helplessly gave up on this 100 flowers baneful energy. Only cultivator number 72 was still communicating with him through a sound-transmitting talisman, seemingly bargaining for a price. In the end, cultivator number 58 seemed to have made a decision and accepted cultivator number 72's proposal. The 2 of them exchanged items. Cultivator number 72 gave him a jade bottle and a pill recipe. Clearly, there was at least 1 half-step core forging stage item, possibly even 2. Watching cultivator number 58 gracefully walk off the stage, everyone felt as if they could see his wish being fulfilled. He was confident that he would soon reach core forging stage. At the same time, they looked at cultivator number 72 with a mixture of envy and jealousy. However, cultivator number 72 clearly didn't care about this. The trade fair continued, and in the blink of an eye, it was cultivator number 72's turn. Because of the spiritual sense imprint, Lu Ping naturally saw this person's every move. After the 72nd cultivator stepped onto the stage, he calmly took out a whip-like magic tool from his storage bracelet. Seeing that no one was surprised, it was clear that they didn't know what this magic tool was used for. He proudly said, "This is the Thunderclap Whip. I found it in an ancient cultivator's cave. There is a treasure restriction placed on it. It is a magic tool without a doubt. When everyone heard that cultivator number 72 had a magic treasure in his hand, a wave of commotion swept through the crowd. Almost every cultivator wrapped their spiritual sense around the thunderclap whip, wanting to see the true appearance of this magic treasure. Although Lu Ping had two magic treasures in hand, he still couldn't resist the temptation of a magic treasure. However, out of caution, he only hid a small strand of spiritual sense behind everyone else's spiritual sense and probed the thunderclap whip. Just as Lu Ping was studying the treasure restriction in the thunderclap whip that was completely different from the treasure restriction in the herb-pounding pestle, a majestic aura suddenly shrouded all of the cultivator's spiritual senses that were wrapped around the thunderclap whip. It enveloped the entire thunderclap whip in an instant. Dozens of spiritual senses retreated like beggars who encountered an emperor. Lu Ping knew that it was a spiritual sense, so naturally, he knew that the thunderclap whip had attracted perfected being Bai's attention. However, when everyone retreated their spiritual senses from the thunderclap whip, Lu Ping paused inexplicably. Then, for some reason, he followed the route that perfected being Bai's spiritual sense had just explored. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly heard perfected being Bai say to the cultivator on the stage, "Young friend, this magic treasure is quite unique. I'm quite interested in it as well. What are you planning to trade for, young friend? Can I join in?" Cultivator number 72's voice was filled with surprise and anxiety as he said, "Since Senior has taken a liking to it, there's no reason for me to reject. I can even give this magic treasure to Senior." Seeing that perfected being Bai had taken a liking to the magic treasure, the cultivators knew that they could not offend a core forging perfected being, so they declared that they could not use the item. Perfected being Bai laughed out loud and said, "Since everyone is giving me face, I won't beat around the bush. As a cultivator of the Northern Alliance, how can I take your item for free? Tell me, what do you need? Let's see if the old man has anything suitable for you." Cultivator number 72 was slightly hesitant as he said, "I'd like to trade this magic treasure for a second-class spiritual material of wood and fire attributes and a treasure restriction related to it to refine my natal magic weapon. I'm planning to upgrade it to a natal magic weapon after I advance to core forging stage." Hee. Perfected being Bai interrupted the cultivator's words with a smile upon hearing that. He said, "That's easy. I happen to have a second-class spiritual material here, geocentric iron. It's originally a ball of liquid iron from the magma in the Earth's core. After a volcano erupted and spewed it to the surface, it condensed into a piece of iron. It's suitable to give it to you, young friend. I also have a treasure restriction that's suitable for fire attribute magic weapons. It's something that the old man has collected over the years. Take it as well." Cultivator number 72 initially thought that although his magic treasure was precious, he would have to go through a lot of trouble to trade for what he wanted. He did not expect to succeed so easily. He was overjoyed and said repeatedly, "Thank you, Senior. Thank you, Senior." Lu Ping looked at perfected being Bai, who was pretending to be forthright, and sneered. Just when Lu Ping followed the trail of perfected being Bai's divine sense and delved into the treasure restriction within the thunderclap whip, Lu Ping realized that there was another treasure restriction within the outer layer of the treasure restriction. If it was not for Lu Ping's divine sense that was different from an ordinary person's, Lu Ping's divine sense would not be able to penetrate the inner layer of the treasure restriction even with perfected being Bai's divine sense's guidance. Perfected being Bai had obviously noticed that this was a magic treasure with two treasure restrictions. Exchanging a second-grade spiritual material for a treasure restriction was a great bargain. Lu Ping had heard Chen Lian talk about this kind of treasure before. It was called the Mother-Child Chain Treasure Seal. This treasure seal was usually created by the same cultivator. It was a unique symbiotic treasure seal that was created by the same cultivator. When the two treasures were combined into a mystic treasure, not only would it be incredibly powerful, but it also had many other marvelous uses. When the mystic treasure was combined with the cultivator's own skills, it would be even more powerful. Perfected being Bai handed a piece of fiery red wrought iron and a divine sense jade slip that had its seal removed to cultivator number 72. The cultivator presented the thunderclap whip respectfully, while the thunderclap whip flew slowly towards Perfected Being By. Just when Perfected Being By was about to accept the Thunderclap Whip with a chuckle, the Thunderclap Whip that was coiled together suddenly stretched out. Under Perfected Being By's horrified gaze, the whip stretched and curled, tying the Perfected Being By to the chair. Chapter 217. Just when Lu Ping was secretly criticizing Perfected Being By for not being as generous and selfless as he seemed, not only did the Thunder Whip catch Perfected Being By off guard, all the cultivators in the crypt stood up and were on guard. Perfected Being By did not expect to fall into someone else's trap due to his moment of greed. The treasure was clearly a trap for Perfected Being By, and Perfected Being By really jumped into it. At that moment, some of the cultivators in the crypt realized that something was wrong. A few of them shouted, "Who dares to disrupt the trading fair on the Three Islands? Aren't you afraid that the Northern Alliance will punish you?" At the same time, they rushed to the stage with their magic tools, attempting to save Perfected Being By who was tied up. Lu Ping shook his head secretly when he saw the few cultivators who were obviously trying to express their goodwill to the Northern Alliance through this method. Since they dared to trick a core-forging Perfected Being, it was obvious that they were well prepared. How could a few blood condensation cultivators mess with them? As expected, cultivator number 72 on the stage only squeezed a word through his teeth. Kill. Suddenly, a few cultivators among the cultivators around the crypt leaped up and attacked the cultivators around them. "How dare you? What are you doing? Stop. Ah, watch out. Who's that?" At that moment, angry shouts and cries of pain were heard. The few cultivators who wanted to rush to the stage to save Perfected Being By were blocked by the attacks coming from nowhere. They had no choice but to stop and defend themselves. "How dare you?" Perfected Being By's fat face was flushed after being tied up by the Thunder Whip. He roared at cultivator number 72. "How dare you attack a cultivator from the Northern Alliance? Who gave you the guts?" Cultivator number 72 did not answer. Instead, he took out a jade talisman from his storage bag. Clearly, Perfected Being By recognized this item as he said loudly, "Can this Thunder Whip trap old By in your hands? I'll let you know that no matter how good a treasure is, it depends on who's using it." As soon as Perfected Being By finished speaking, a silvery white glow shone from his body, pushing the Thunder Whip that was coiled around him away. The glow from the jade talisman in cultivator number 72's hand slowed down. He chanted a few incantations in a blur and pointed his left hand at Perfected Being By. The Thunder Whip that was pushed away by Perfected Being By suddenly exploded with blue lightning, penetrating the light barrier that Perfected Being By raised and striking him directly. Enlightened Master Bai's body stiffened. His rotund body abruptly straightened, and the silver barrier of light that he had spread out shrank. By then, cultivator number 72 had finally completed his preparations. He tossed the jade talisman in his hand at Enlightened Master Bai's feet. The jade talisman exploded, transforming into tins of silver lines that landed at different spots beneath Enlightened Master Bai's feet. The formation that had teleported Reverend Bai here earlier suddenly reappeared. Amidst Reverend Bai's roar, a dazzling light flashed. Reverend Bai's figure was no longer on the stage. Only a 30-feet-long Thunder Whip was left on the ground. At this moment, cultivator number 72 seemed to have unloaded a heavy burden. He took a few heavy breaths, and his black cloak constantly expanded and contracted along with his breathing. The underground cave was currently in a mess. Due to the cloak's concealment, the cultivators could no longer identify the few cultivators who launched the sneak attack in the beginning as they moved around. Everyone was in danger, as if every cultivator around them could be their enemy. Coupled with the incitement of someone with ulterior motives, a chaotic battle broke out among almost 100 cultivators in the underground cave within a short period of time. In the beginning, Lu Ping was also ambushed by a cultivator behind him. However, Lu Ping was already on high alert when he realized Perfected Being By was tied up on the stage. Sensing the sneak attack from behind, Lu Ping immediately raised his protective chi barrier. However, Lu Ping did not expect the person who ambushed him to use a flying needle magic tool. This type of magic tool was most effective against the protective chi barrier. The flying needle pierced through the protective chi barrier directly and almost made a small hole on Lu Ping's inner armor. Lu Ping broke out in cold sweat from the shock. He quickly raised his cloudy sky. Fortunately, the magic power of the high-grade flying needle was corroded by the meteorite vital poison when it pierced through the protective chi barrier. Eventually, it was blocked by the inner armor. Otherwise, he would have been severely injured even if he did not die. Lu Ping, who was ambushed, was extremely enraged. Before he turned around, the Qing Han sword had already turned into a stream of light and slashed towards the direction where the flying needle came from. A scream was heard. When Lu Ping turned around, he saw a tall and skinny cultivator looking at Lu Ping with hatred. The cloak on his head and his left arm had been cut off by the Qing Han sword. Due to the cover of the black cloak, Lu Ping actually did not know who had ambushed him with the flying needle. However, Lu Ping could not care so much now. It was either he did not do it, or he did it to the extreme. As Lu Ping's divine sense fluctuated, the Qing Han sword turned around and stabbed back at the tall and skinny cultivator again. The tall and skinny cultivator was panicking. Ignoring the pain of his broken arm, he forcefully took out a high-grade defensive magic tool. However, the Qing Han sword struck him and he lost his head. With the deepening of Lu Ping's cultivation and the further cultivation of the North Sea Wave listening spell, Lu Ping's killing methods became more and more domineering and direct when fighting with other cultivators. Lu Ping's thunderous methods caused the cultivators around him to avoid him. They did not want to provoke this fiend. This was also the reason why Lu Ping had taken the opportunity to attack just now. This was a situation where ants could bite an elephant to death. Once he was surrounded, he would definitely die. Lu Ping could only intimidate the cultivators around him from the beginning to have a chance to escape. However, just as Lu Ping put away the storage bag of the tall and skinny cultivator, a three-legged cauldron suddenly rose from the center of the cave. The mouth of the cauldron suddenly opened and a stream of fire burst out. The surrounding cultivators were swept by the stream of fire. Two cultivators were instantly burned into nothingness. Several cultivators who dodged quickly also had their protective magic tools and gang chi damaged. This was definitely the flame of a heavenly spirit fire that had lost its spirituality. The bright yellow flame raged in all directions. Lu Ping looked at cultivator number 72 who was standing quietly under the cauldron. At this moment, cultivator number 72 seemed to have discovered Lu Ping's location. A bright yellow stream of fire shot straight towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping did not want to reveal too many methods. He spread out his left hand and a red flame appeared in his palm. He used the fire control technique and his magic power surged. The flame suddenly expanded and turned into a fire umbrella, firmly blocking the incoming stream of fire in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping sighed inwardly. After all, the North Sea Wave listening technique was a water attribute technique. Although it was fine to use it to control the Crimson Phoenix's fire seed, due to the nature of the fire, it consumed a lot of magic power. Moreover, the fire seed's full power was difficult to display. Lu Ping's methods had obviously attracted the attention of cultivator number 72. Just as he looked at Lu Ping and was about to launch an all-out attack, as if he suddenly received a message from Lu Ping. He let out a long howl and a few cultivators leaped out from the crowd and flew towards him. At the same time, a shuttle-shaped mystic instrument appeared in his hand. The mystic instrument expanded, and the cultivators all sat inside. The long shuttle rammed into a wall, shattering the array formation used to stabilize the cave surface. The shuttle flashed and disappeared into the cave wall. Chapter 218. When the teleportation array in the cavern began to crumble, the array formation used to stabilize the cavern walls also began to crumble. The entire cavern began to shake and crumble. Lu Ping quickly realized something was wrong and quickly took Debeo out of the spirit beast pouch. The cultivators in the cave also realized that something was wrong and used all sorts of methods to escape from the cave. With a rumbling sound, the cave started to collapse. Lu Ping rode on Debeo's body and slammed into the cave walls. The man and the mouse immediately disappeared. In a small forest, the ground suddenly exploded and a green flying sword flew out from the dust cloud. It circled around, and Lu Ping grabbed Debeo and dashed out from the ground with his face covered in dust. After confirming that there was no danger in the surroundings, Lu Ping patted Debeo's head and said, "I've prepared a condensed blood bead for you this time. It's from a pangolin beast. Go back and make a good breakthrough. Next time, don't run out of spiritual energy when you're halfway through." At this moment, Debeo was like a large piece of rotten meat in Lu Ping's hands. Lu Ping didn't expect that this sealed cave was built several tens of meters below the surface. Debeo had already used up a lot of spiritual energy to carry Lu Ping. When they were several meters away from the surface, they ran out of spiritual energy. The man and mouse were stuck in the ground just like that. Lu Ping could only use the Qinghan sword to dig a hole in the ground and rush out. Lu Ping spread out his divine sense in the forest and discovered that he was actually on a small island. Seeing that there was no one around, Lu Ping wrapped himself in a cloud and slowly rose into the sky like a white cloud. From a bird's eye view, Lu Ping discovered that this small island was southeast of Sanja Island. There were many small islands scattered around the island, so he didn't expect Sanja Island's underground trade fair to be held here. Not far from the small forest, there was a small mound that was currently collapsing. Presumably, the crypt was located below it. At that moment, several dozen cultivators suddenly emerged from the ground in a sorry state. Some of them immediately sat cross-legged on the ground to recover their spiritual power. Others felt that they couldn't stay here for long and planned to leave. At that moment, the long shuttle-shaped magic artifact suddenly broke through the ground not far away from them. The dozen or so cultivators on the long shuttle-shaped magic artifact flew down and charged towards the dozen or so cultivators. It looked as though the dozen or so cultivators were ambushing the dozen or so cultivators. In reality, that was indeed the case. Among the 100 cultivators in the cave, more than 20 of them died in the chaotic battle. Other than this group of cultivators who even dared to plot against enlightened being Bai, there were only 40 to 50 of them who managed to escape from the underground. Moreover, most of them had exhausted their magic power. If it wasn't for the help of Debeo's earth escape technique, Lu Ping would have to spend a lot of spiritual power to get out of the cave. In the blink of an eye, nearly 10 of the cultivators who rushed out from the underground were killed. The remaining cultivators gathered together and barely managed to resist the cultivators who escaped from the long shuttle-shaped magic artifact. Just as Lu Ping was hesitating whether he should help the 40 or so cultivators who were besieged by the dozen or so cultivators on the island, a fire chain suddenly stretched out from behind Lu Ping and silently swept towards Lu Ping. Naturally, Lu Ping would not let it hit him. He slashed backwards with his Qinghan sword, and the fire chain that was several meters long was immediately cut into two. However, the broken fire chain was still circling around each other and twisted towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping pointed with his finger, and a stream of water flowed towards the two fire chains. As the water and fire collided, a series of rumbling sounds could be heard. A thick white mist immediately formed in the sky. Lu Ping's divine sense swept out, but he still could not find the location of the sneak attacker. At this moment, a huge cauldron suddenly appeared above Lu Ping's head and smashed down towards Lu Ping with the force of Mount Tai. The moment the huge cauldron appeared, Lu Ping caught the source of the spiritual power fluctuation. Ignoring the huge cauldron above his head, he pointed with his right hand, and the Qinghan sword issued a sharp whistle in the sky. Hundreds of sword lights drew a long sword shadow in the sky and stabbed towards the sneak attacker. Just as the huge cauldron was about to fall, a huge square seal suddenly appeared on the side of the huge cauldron and slammed horizontally towards the huge cauldron. Amidst the loud bang, it seemed as if the island below also shook. The people who were fighting on the island didn't know what was going on. They all retreated to the side and looked towards the sky. Although the huge cauldron was a high-grade magic tool, magic tools like pill cauldrons were special. In the hands of a core forging enlightened master, the power of a high-grade cauldron magic tool was no less than a magic tool. However, Lu Ping's landslide was not weak. It was a top-grade magic tool refined from deep-sea silver iron, and had the potential to become a magic tool. Moreover, it actively slammed horizontally, so it immediately knocked the huge cauldron away. The cultivator who sneaked an attack on Lu Ping was originally surprised by Lu Ping's superb swordsmanship and was trying his best to block the attack of Lu Ping's Qinghan sword. At this moment, when the huge cauldron was knocked away by the landslide, the cultivator was caught off guard. His divine sense sank and his hand suddenly slowed by half a beat. The Qinghan sword took the opportunity to attack. With a chi-la sound, the black cloak was cut. Lu Ping caught a glimpse of the cultivator and a silver gauze quickly covered the cultivator's exposed appearance, blocking Lu Ping's divine sense. A female cultivator. Although he couldn't see the cultivator's face clearly, it didn't prevent Lu Ping from determining the cultivator's gender. Lu Ping didn't expect that the cultivator was actually a woman. Moreover, it was very likely that she was also an alchemist. After all, the huge cauldron was a high-grade pill cauldron. Lu Ping shook his Qinghan sword and was about to cut the cultivator's veil. At this time, two top-grade magic tools suddenly flew from behind the cultivator and firmly blocked Lu Ping's attack. It turned out that the cultivators on the small island had discovered that Lu Ping had the upper hand and quickly sent two people to assist him. They just happened to block Lu Ping's Qinghan sword. Oomph! The cultivator whose cloak was cut by Lu Ping snorted coldly. Suddenly, Lu Ping felt an indescribable sharp object rushing toward Lu Ping's mind. Through Lu Ping's divine sense, he felt as if it was being torn apart. A divine sense attack technique? This person was clearly only at the peak of the blood condensation realm, but he had mastered an offensive technique that could only be cultivated with divine sense. His divine sense was far weaker than Lu Ping's, but it was extremely condensed. It was comparable to divine sense, and was far superior to Lu Ping's divine sense. Lu Ping suddenly understood. It seemed that this person had cultivated a secret technique that allowed him to transform his divine sense into divine sense in the blood condensation realm. Therefore, although this person's divine sense was comparable to a core forging enlightened master's divine sense in terms of quality, it was far inferior in terms of quantity. No wonder this person was able to plant a tracking mark on him in the cave, causing Lu Ping to think that this person was a core forging enlightened master in disguise. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ping had already figured out the cause and effect. Now that he knew that no core forging enlightened master was involved in this matter, he immediately relaxed. Lu Ping retracted his divine sense and once again built a divine sense wall around him. Although the enemy cultivator's divine sense attack was unstoppable, breaking through Lu Ping's divine sense defense layer after layer. But in the end, Lu Ping was unable to withstand the attack due to the lack of momentum. Chapter 219. After Lu Ping blocked the opponent's spiritual sense attack, Lu Ping and the cultivator simultaneously turned to look behind them. Lu Ping wore a thoughtful expression, and his expression relaxed. However, the dozen or so cultivators suddenly stopped and quickly retreated towards the eastern sea. Cultivator 72 took out his shuttle again, and after the dozen or so cultivators entered it, the shuttle flashed in the air. When Lu Ping looked again, it was already 1,000 meters away. At that moment, 3 powerful spiritual pressures suddenly appeared on the island. Lu Ping pretended to be out of magic power and landed on the island. The remaining 30 or so cultivators on the island all sat paralyzed on the ground, without the slightest trace of a cultivator's demeanor. 3 long roars came from afar, and there was a trace of anger in the voices. After a while, the 3 figures stopped on the island. The 3 figures emitted a vast spiritual force and divine sense. It was clear to everyone that these 3 were core forging stage experts. Lu Ping recognized the cultivator on the far left as the Li clan's patriarch, Li Maolin. From this, it seemed that the other 2 were the patriarchs of the Zhang and Wang clans. At this moment, Lu Ping was already standing together with the remaining cultivators. Seeing the 3 spiritual masters arrive, it seemed that they were aware of the changes in the underground trade fair. Some of the more quick-witted cultivators had already taken off their cloaks. Lu Ping also followed suit and took off his cloak. At that moment, several streaks of light flew behind the 3 spiritual masters. These streaks of light were the children of the 3 great clans. Among them were the 4 young masters, the Wang clan's alchemist, and the Li clan's alchemist. Lu Ping was surprised when he saw Li Xiuzhu and the others. Then, he remembered that the underground trade fair was originally organized by the three great clans. It was normal for the disciples of the three great clans to have life-saving methods in the underground cave. After the disciples of the three great clans escaped, they quickly notified their respective clans, and the three spiritual masters arrived. After hearing the news, everyone realized that this group of cultivators didn't leave behind any loopholes. They only knew that the dozen or so cultivators were at the peak of the 9th layer of the blood condensation realm. They were stronger than cultivators in the same realm. Their sneak attack was well-planned and didn't leave much information for the three core forging enlightened masters. In fact, Lu Ping had discovered something about the leader of the group, number 72. However, he obviously wouldn't say it out loud. The whole sneak attack was complicated and confusing. Even the core forging enlightened masters were involved. It was obviously not the work of an ordinary force. In fact, not only Lu Ping, but the other 40 or so survivors of the three clans were also wary of this sneak attack. Their suspicious gazes were all directed at the three great clans. The news of the underground trade fair being attacked quickly spread throughout the three clans' islands. The cultivators in the three clan cities discussed it, and all kinds of rumors and slanders spread through various channels. The survivors of the three clans' islands quickly disappeared from the eyes of the cultivators of the three clans' islands. Even if the cultivators wanted to find out what happened, they couldn't find them. Lu Ping was warmly invited to stay in the Li family's manor by the Li family's patriarch. The patriarch repeatedly apologized to Lu Ping for the underground trade fair. Lu Ping didn't mind. After all, the incident was too sudden. Two of the Li family's cultivators had died in the attack. The Li family had already prepared the spiritual herbs needed to concoct the 7-step marked pill. Lu Ping decided to start concocting the pill in the next few days. Li Maolin was naturally overjoyed. He gave the order, and Lu Ping's requests were all fulfilled. 2 days later, the rumors in the three clan cities became more and more widespread. The spearhead was quickly pointed at the three great clans. The transmission talismans that allowed the underground trade fair were in the hands of the three great clans. Most cultivators believed that only the three great clans had the ability to send the same group of cultivators into the underground cave. Of course, there were also cultivators who believed that it couldn't be ruled out that the culprit had been plotting against the three clans for a long time. However, the possibility of this was not high. Some people said that it was the Zhang family's doing. They wanted to unify the three clans' islands and push aside the other two clans. However, this theory was obviously not accepted by everyone. The Zhang family had always followed the lead of the Northern Alliance. They wouldn't do anything to enlighten Master Bai. Moreover, the Zhang family didn't have the power to fall out with the Northern Alliance. Some people said that it was the Li family's doing. However, this was even more unlikely. The Li family was the weakest in the three clans' islands. They were usually the most cautious. The Li family's disciples never caused trouble or participated in it. They acted as a neutral party on the three clans' islands, staying between the Zhang family and the Wang family. Then, the biggest suspect was the Wang family. The Wang family had always been at odds with the Zhang family for the position of the number 1 family on the three clans' islands. However, the Northern Alliance had always supported the Zhang family. This caused the Wang family to always be at a disadvantage in the battle between the two clans. Presumably, the Wang family had a lot of complaints about the Northern Alliance. What was more coincidental was that not long ago, a group of cultivators from the Crystal Palace set up a secret stronghold on a small island attached to the three clans' islands. Not only did the cultivators from the Crystal Palace who had their hands in the Northern Alliance's territory not let the matter rest, they even sent a group of cultivators to investigate the cause of their cultivators dying in the Northern Alliance's territory. After this pair of cultivators came to the three clans' islands, they were warmly received by the Wang family. The disciples of the Wang family accompanied the cultivators from the Crystal Palace in and out of the three clans' islands market. It could be said that the cultivators from the three clans' islands had witnessed this. Lu Ping almost had a conflict with these people in the market that day. It seemed that because the Wang family was dissatisfied with the Northern Alliance's favoritism of the Zhang family, after getting the support of the Crystal Palace, they disrupted the trade fair to attack the reputation of the Zhang family and the Northern Alliance behind them. This made sense. Only one day after this message was spread, the cultivators from the Wang family who went out to the Three Clans Islands were attacked by an anonymous cultivator. 2 Wang family disciples died. This seemed to be a signal. Another day later, the cultivators from the Wang family who went out to hunt with the cultivators from the Crystal Palace were attacked by an unknown force again. The attacker even gave up on the cultivators from the Wang family and turned to attack the cultivators from the Crystal Palace. When the reinforcements from the Wang family were about to arrive, the attacker killed the 2 cultivators from the Crystal Palace. After the 2 attacks, the Wang family seemed to be identified by all the cultivators from the Three Clans Islands as the participants of the underground trade fair attack. The mastermind behind the attack was naturally the cultivators from the Crystal Palace who were in cahoots with the Wang family. The Wang family naturally tried to defend themselves. At the same time, they announced that they would severely punish the people who slandered the Wang family and hunt down the murderers of the 2 attacks. However, the development of the situation was beyond the expectations of the Wang family. The cultivators who survived the underground trade fair appeared one after another and questioned the Wang family. Because these cultivators were either the leaders of some small forces or had quite a reputation among the cultivators. Otherwise, they would not have been allowed to participate in the trade fair by the 3 clans' teleportation talismans. Therefore, these people's doubts made the situation of the Wang family even worse. The cultivators from the Wang family and the cultivators from the Crystal Palace frequently met with danger outside. On this day, the coercion of a core forging enlightened master once again descended on the 3 clan cities. The master of the Li family and the others were alarmed. Li Xiuzhu and the others returned after a while, but Li Maolin went to the Zhang family. Lu Ping found out that enlightened Master Bai, who was schemed against by someone with a magic weapon in the underground trade fair, was sent to the sea thousands of miles away. He brought a group of cultivators from the Northern Alliance and returned to the 3 clans islands angrily. There were also 2 core forging enlightened masters from the Wind Cicada Hall and the Fire Cicada Hall from the Northern Alliance. At this time, the 3 clans and some famous forces and cultivators from the 3 clans islands gathered at the Zhang family to discuss the attack on the trade fair. The entire 3 clan cities became jittery because of enlightened Master Bai's return. Chapter 220. 2 days later, the 3 major families, including the Wang family, reached an agreement to jointly expel the Crystal Palace cultivators from the 3 families' island. At the same time, enlightened Master Bai and the other 2 enlightened masters represented the Northern Alliance to announce that the Crystal Palace was not welcome in the Northern Alliance's sphere of influence. They requested the Crystal Palace cultivators to return to their own sects immediately. The Crystal Palace's 36-people team, which was originally made up of late blood condensation cultivators, was not weak, but there was no concrete evidence to prove that the Crystal Palace cultivators had anything to do with the trade fair. However, they did not dare to violate the agreement made by the enlightened masters of the 3 families' island. Although these cultivators had repeatedly stressed that the trade fair had nothing to do with the Crystal Palace and pulled out the Crystal Palace's strong name, the cultivators of the 3 families' island had clearly determined that the Crystal Palace cultivators were plotting something on the 3 families' island. The Crystal Palace cultivators had no choice but to leave the 3 families' island and return to their own sections. After the Crystal Palace retreated, the eldest son of the Wang family, Wang Yishan, also left. It was said that he was recommended to become the personal disciple of the enlightened master of the Crystal Palace. The situation on the 3 families' island changed. On the surface, the Wang family was being suppressed, and the Northern Alliance declared its suzerainty. However, the Crystal Palace had planted a chess piece in the Northern Alliance through the Wang family, extending their influence into the Northern Alliance's sphere of influence in another way. At the same time, although the Wang family was slightly weaker than the Zhang family, it was not easy for the Zhang family to occupy the 3 families' island with the support of the Northern Alliance. Therefore, the Li family became the target of the Zhang family. At the same time, the Northern Alliance also made a promise to the Li family. Although the Li family remained neutral in the Three Families Island as usual, they began to part ways with the Wang family and secretly began to flirt with the Zhang family. Their previous awkward position in the Three Families Island had been alleviated a lot. The changes in the Three Families Island did not affect Lu Ping, who was preparing to refine the 7-step marked elixir. Just as Lu Ping was about to go into seclusion to refine pills, he received another invitation from Li Maolin. When Lu Ping arrived at the Li clan's reception room, apart from Li Maolin and his daughter, there was also a female cultivator playing with a jade pendant in her hand. She looked at Lu Ping with a scrutinizing gaze. Li Maolin pointed at the unfamiliar female cultivator and introduced her with a smile. "Brother Lu Jiao, this is the daughter of a good friend of the old man. Her name is Chu Ting. We haven't seen each other for decades. I didn't think that this niece of the old man would also be fated to receive the inheritance of an alchemist in her early years. Now, she can actually refine pills that are half a step into the core forging stage. The old man is very pleased that his old friend has such a daughter." Lu Ping was startled. He bowed slightly and said, "I am Lu Jiao. Greetings, Miss Chu." Out of politeness, Chu Ting got up from her seat and greeted Lu Ping. After the two sat down, Li Maolin was about to say something, but Chu Ting spoke first. "I didn't expect Brother Lu to be able to refine pills that are half a step into the core forging stage, even though you have just reached the late blood condensation stage. It's really admirable." Lu Ping could tell that although this Miss Chu spoke politely, there was a trace of arrogance in her tone. She must be a cultivator of noble birth. He calmly replied, "I was just lucky. It's not worth mentioning." Chu Ting obviously didn't care about Lu Ping's perfunctory reply. She continued to ask, "May I ask what kind of pills Brother Lu has refined in the past?" This was a bit rude. Lu Ping glanced at her and didn't answer. Li Maolin quickly said, "The difficulty of refining a 7-step marked pill is no less than an ordinary core forging stage pill. Moreover, the spiritual herbs required to refine a 7-step marked pill are extremely difficult to find. My Li family has been collecting spiritual herbs for many years, but we barely managed to gather 4 furnaces. This matter concerns whether my daughter can successfully advance to the core forging stage. The old man has to be cautious. Brother Lu will refine 2 furnaces, and niece Chu Ting will refine the other 2 furnaces. Both of you only need to refine 1 7-step marked pill each. What do you think?" Lu Ping naturally knew that the Li family didn't trust him. After all, the Li family invited him here based on their own guesses. Compared to the Li family, the daughter of Li Maolin's old friend was obviously more trustworthy. As an alchemist, Lu Ping naturally had his own pride. He quietly stood up and said, "Since Clan Master Li doesn't trust me and even invited a brilliant alchemist, I'll withdraw from the concoction. However, the recipe for the 7-step rune pellet has already been memorized in my mind. Forgive me for not being able to return it." Lu Ping's words were quite heavy. Li Maolin suddenly panicked. However, he was, after all, a Taoist master. He immediately weighed the pros and cons. Once today's matter was spread out, he was afraid that in the future, no alchemist would come to the Li family. Every single alchemist was arrogant to death. At the same time, they were also extremely conservative and paranoid. If Lu Ping was directly driven away by Chu Ting today, in the eyes of the alchemists, Lu Ping deserved to be humiliated because his skills were inferior. However, if the Li family invited a brilliant alchemist and they despised Lu Ping's alchemy skills, then not only would the Li family become the enemy of the alchemists, but Chu Ting would also be isolated by the alchemists. Chu Ting obviously wasn't familiar with these unspoken rules among the alchemists. Although Li Maolin wasn't an alchemist, with his hundreds of years of experience, he had obviously heard a lot about these unspoken rules. He hurriedly stood up and stopped Lu Ping, saying, "Brother Lu, please calm down. It's not that the old man doesn't trust Brother Lu. It's just that whether or not my daughter can advance to the core forging stage is of great importance. Brother Lu must have some understanding of the situation on the Three Families Island. The Li family is weak. If we can't produce another Taoist master, I'm afraid we won't be able to have a foothold on the Three Families Island." Seeing Li Maolin like this, Lu Ping knew that a Taoist master had given him enough face. Moreover, he had also taken the 7-step marked pills recipe. If he just left like this, it would be a bit dishonorable. So, he said, since patriarchy has said so, this junior is not someone who doesn't know what's good for him. I will do my best. Li Maolin was overjoyed and hurriedly ordered his servants to lead Lu Ping to the alchemy room. At the same time, he sent 2 furnaces of spirit herbs to refine the 7-step marked pill. After Lu Ping left, Li Xiuzhu asked in a puzzled tone, "Father, since senior sister Chu has already arrived, we can only speculate about this Lu Jia's alchemy skills. We haven't seen it with our own eyes. If he wants to leave, he can leave. Why did father stop him? What if this person is just a deceiver? Wouldn't it be a pity to waste 2 furnaces of spirit herbs?" Li Maolin shook his head and explained some of the alchemist's rules one by one. Although he was explaining it to Li Xiuzhu, he was actually telling it to Chu Ting. After Chu Ting heard everything, she placed the jade pendant on her waist and murmured, "No wonder Master repeatedly told niece to befriend an alchemist no matter how good or bad his alchemy skills are." Niece didn't think much of it, but it turns out this is the secret. Li Maolin shook his head and said, "That person's alchemy skills aren't necessarily bad." Ever since he came to the 3 Families Island, the rogue cultivators in the market square often asked him for some spirit herbs. He answered all of them one by one. He has never encountered a spirit herb that he doesn't recognize. It's obvious that his alchemy foundation is quite solid. Chu Ting thought for a moment and said, "This 3 Families Island is only a small area. I'm afraid there won't be any rare spirit herbs here. It shouldn't be too difficult for him to recognize all of them." Although Chu Ting said so, the arrogance on her face had disappeared and was replaced by a trace of seriousness. Li Maolin didn't pay attention to Chu Ting's words and continued, "Moreover, this person is very mysterious. I can't see through him. He should have a high-level secret technique that allows him to completely change his aura. Moreover, he might not be a 7th-layer blood condensation realm cultivator. Zhuer, I'm afraid you might not be his opponent." When Li Xiuzhu heard his father's words, he said in disbelief, "How can that be? Doesn't that mean he's a core forging realm cultivator?" Li Maolin said seriously, "Nonsense. Zhuer, do you think you're invincible among the blood condensation realm cultivators? I'm afraid even your senior martial sister Chu isn't his opponent." Li Xiuzhu knew he had said the wrong thing, but he was still a little unconvinced. Chu Ting said thoughtfully indeed, "Junior martial sister Li, do you remember the cultivator number 57 from the trade fair? That person's strength is very high. I'm afraid even I am not his opponent. Originally, I thought that person must be a core forging enlightened master who sealed his cultivation. Now that I think about it, I feel that person is similar to Lu Jiu. No wonder I felt a sense of familiarity when I saw him." When Li Maolin heard this, he was shocked and asked in unison, "Is this true?" Chu Ting shook her head and said, "I can't be sure, but it feels similar. That person was extremely cunning. He didn't leave any traces of himself behind. He was even able to break a spiritual sense imprint. Moreover, that person should be proficient in a concealment technique that lowers his cultivation. This is also the reason why I suspected he was a core forging enlightened master." Li Maolin said, "It's a pity that I couldn't meet Martial Niece Chu at that time. Otherwise, that person wouldn't have taken advantage of the chaos to sneak into the crowd of survivors. Martial Niece, are you sure your identity hasn't been discovered by that person?" Chu Ting thought for a moment and said, "I don't think so. The moment the cloak broke, I used the cloud shroud to conceal my appearance and aura. I don't think that person noticed me." In the Li clan's pill refining room, Lu Ping had already made up his mind. Regardless of whether the 7-step marked pill was successfully refined or not, he had to leave the Li clan as soon as possible. Lu Ping didn't expect that the people involved in the underground trade fair attack were from the Li clan. Moreover, that Chu Ting just now was Cultivator 72 who fought with Lu Ping. That day, Lu Ping and Cultivator 72 fought twice. Although Lu Ping used the Qing Han sword to cut the Cultivator 72's cloak, the other party's reaction was very fast. In an instant, she covered her face with a layer of muslin, only allowing Lu Ping to know that she was a woman. However, when Lu Ping saw Chu Ting, He saw that the jade pendant she was playing with was exactly the same as the one on Cultivator 72's waist. Moreover, Lu Ping also smelled a serene and distant fragrance. This fragrance was very familiar to Lu Ping. It was a rather elegant fragrance that cultivators would have after taking the 100-flower pill. Although the 100-flower pill's fragrance could be changed according to the cultivator's preferences, as an alchemist, he would naturally know whether the fragrance came from the 100-flower pill or not. Moreover, Chu Ting's fragrance hadn't changed. It was exactly the same as the one emitted by Cultivator 72. The cloud shroud concealed one's appearance and aura, but it couldn't conceal a cultivator's body fragrance. This was probably what it meant to know a woman by smell. Chapter 221. Lu Ping obviously realized that the Li family was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. There was also a mysterious force supporting him, and this mysterious force was obviously not on good terms with the Northern Alliance or the Crystal Palace. The underground trade fair incident not only suppressed the arrogance of the Wang family and the Crystal Palace, but also changed the weak state of the Li family on Sanja Island. They also schemed against the two giants of the East Sea, the Crystal Palace and the Northern Alliance, causing the two families to have a face-to-face conflict. Perhaps the reason was because of the Crystal Palace. Lu Ping seemed to think of something. Through Lu Ping's understanding, before the Crystal Palace cultivators entered the Wang family and the Li family joined forces to resist the Zhang family in Sanja Island. But first, the Li family's eldest daughter removed the Crystal Palace's secret stronghold on Maja Island. Then, the Crystal Palace cultivators came to Sanja Island to investigate the disappearance of the Crystal Palace cultivators in the sea near Sanja Island. After the Wang family and the Crystal Palace got close, the trade fair broke out. The Crystal Palace cultivators were expelled and the Wang family was suppressed. Throughout the whole incident, Lu Ping finally noticed a clue. The mysterious force behind the Li family was against the Crystal Palace. As for provoking the Northern Alliance, suppressing the Wang family, and improving the Li family's position on Sanja Island, these things were just incidental to a series of plans against the Crystal Palace. In the face of the game between these forces, Lu Ping knew that these things were far from what he could participate in now. The only thing Lu Ping wanted to do now was to refine a 7-step marked pill and then stay away from these things. The East Sea was far richer and broader than the North Sea. Since he accidentally came to the East Sea, he naturally had to take a look. Lu Ping had already concocted half-step core forging realm medicinal pellets several times. Although the medicinal pellets he concocted this time were no weaker than core forging realm medicinal pellets, he was still confident that he could concoct a 7-step mark pellet with each cauldron. However, Li Maolin had already stated that Lu Ping only needed to refine one of the 2 furnaces worth of medicinal pellets. Although Li Maolin had doubts about Lu Ping's alchemy skills and was pretending to be magnanimous, Lu Ping could still use this statement to claim the extra 7-step mark pellets for himself. Because of Li Maolin's words, Lu Ping tried every possible way to delay the time of alchemy and refine the spirit expansion pill, which strengthened Lu Ping's divine sense once again. Moreover, Lu Ping still had a treasure that he was reluctant to use. It was the amethyst royal jelly that AI Shutao gave him in the 7-star sky. If this person can also successfully refine one, then Nice will try to break through to core forging stage here. Once successful, the Li family will have 2 more core forging enlightened masters. That should be enough to deter the forces of the 3 families' island. Li Xiuzhu was overjoyed. Although Li Maolin was happy, he still cautiously said, "Tinger, are you ready to condense your gold core?" Condensing a gold core is no small matter. This concerns your future cultivation path. If your master finds out that you are hastily condensing your gold core here, I'm afraid I won't be able to explain it to your master. Chu Ting smiled and said, "Martial uncle, don't worry. I, your niece, have already made preparations to break through to core forging stage. It is only because master has repeatedly emphasized that I need to consolidate my foundation and not rush to condense my gold core that I have been suppressing my cultivation. Now that martial nephew has mastered the divine sense transformation secret technique, after advancing to core forging stage, my divine sense will increase by leaps and bounds. I have already accumulated enough, so I can break through at any time. Hearing this, Li Maolin relaxed and hurriedly arranged an alchemy room for Chu Ting, preparing to refine a 7-step marked pill. 2 days later, in the alchemy room arranged for Chu Ting, Li Maolin and Li Xiuzhu accompanied a hale and hearty old man as they looked in the direction of the alchemy room. Li Maolin respectfully said to the old man next to him, "Father, it seems that Ting really is a rare alchemy genius. The difficulty of refining a 7-step marked pill is almost the same as refining a core forging stage pill. I didn't expect Ting to successfully refine it on her first try. Junior sister Chu has a daughter like this." The old man snorted, interrupting Li Maolin's words and said, "Is there still no movement from the other alchemy master's alchemy room?" Li Maolin knew that he had just said the wrong thing, but Li Xiuzhu quickly followed up. "It seems that even if this person is an alchemy master, his alchemy skills can't be compared to senior sister Chu's. This person entered the alchemy room half a day earlier than senior sister Chu, but now there is no movement. Perhaps the 2 precious spirit grasses will be wasted by him." The old man kindly looked at his granddaughter, then turned to Li Maolin and said, "Regardless of whether this person can refine a 7-step marked pill or not, our Li family must treat him with respect and not neglect him." Li Maolin respectfully complied, and the old man turned around and walked away. Li Xiuzhu's eyes turned, and he quickly chased after the old man. It was unknown what he said to the old man, but the 2 of them chatted and laughed. Soon, they arrived at the depths of the Li family manor. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.